Chapter 13:13. Why would Poplar Fruit be sitting on the stage? Not everyone was qualified to be the head of the ceremony. In addition to the position in the school, the professor also had to have an academic status. For large schools, there were basically only professors. For example, Fong Beibei's mathematics school was like this. For smaller schools or schools that were established recently, it was common for professors and associate professors to go on stage together. However, Poplar Fruit was not even an associate professor. He was only a lecturer. With such a young face, he stood out among the professors who were generally in their 40s or 50s. Fong Beibei's dilemma was not about Poplar Fruit's identity, but why didn't Poplar Fruit tell her anything before this? Yang Wu wasn't like this in the past. If there was anything, she would basically tell her. Why did he hide it from her during such an important celebration? Fong Beibei suddenly felt a little worried. Although Poplar Fruit should have his reasons, Fong Beibei was still a little nervous. After a while, Lin Xingshan suddenly came over and said to Fong Beibei, "Wow, Beibei, so your family's son is attending today as a specially invited alumnus." Yes, if Poplar Fruit was not attending as a specially invited alumnus, what other identity could he have? There were many professors in the School of Foreign Languages. A young guy who was not even an associate professor could not occupy the position of an old professor, right? Fong Beibei came back to her senses and looked at the stage. The principal was introducing Poplar Fruit's resume. While she was worrying about her gains and losses, the principal had already given a speech. Next was Poplar Fruit's speech. Originally, the host was supposed to introduce Poplar Fruit. However, the principal excitedly took the lead. Although this was not the first time, it could be seen that the principal valued Poplar Fruit. In the introduction, Poplar Fruit's previous official position was not conspicuous, excluding the shareholders of New Translation Road. This was a secret. However, a series of achievements blinded the audience. The global bestsellers, the Nobel Prize in Literature winners. Poplar Fruit played a significant role behind the scenes. The remote education he advocated had begun to benefit millions of children all over the country, including the poorest and most backward African continent. Of course, Poplar Fruit himself was also a philanthropist. He donated hundreds of millions of yuan to a charity fund. Even among the rich, he was dazzling. In addition to this, the principal solemnly introduced Poplar Fruit's academic achievements. A revolutionary breakthrough. The principal used such words to praise Poplar Fruit's contribution. Then, the principal happily announced that Poplar Fruit had been hired by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a special interpreter. It sounded nice, but it was actually a temporary job. He had also been invited to the Tiananmen rostrum to cooperate with the translation work for the military parade. The former was not a big deal at Higashiyama University. After all, there were still many professors at Higashiyama University who received special subsidies from the State Council. However, to be on the viewing platform for the military parade was a big deal. The Tiananmen rostrum was an important place for national leaders and major foreign guests to watch the ceremony. One had to know that there were only a few people in the country who could stand there. Even Zheng Yujia's father, the leader of Guangdong province, was not qualified. The principal was still very capable. After such a shocking piece of news, before everyone could recover from their shock and admiration, he announced another piece of explosive news. Poplar Fruit had been hired as the head of the newly opened Department of Eurasian Languages in the School of Foreign Languages. At the age of 27, he was the head of the department. This really broke Higashiyama University's record. If the principal had announced this announcement first, it would have definitely caused an uproar. After all, Poplar Fruit was too young. However, after the principal announced the more shocking news of the military parade, everyone suddenly felt that Poplar Fruit was the right person to be the head of the department. He was a real genius, a real great scholar. To be promoted by an exception was also because the school had a good eye for talent. However, Fong Beibei was not shocked. She had already known about these things. Poplar Fruit had told her immediately. But why didn't he say anything today? This was something that Fong Beibei could not understand. However, Poplar Fruit's next speech as a specially invited alumnus made Fong Beibei blush. The theme of Poplar Fruit's speech was actually more relaxed. Remember love in your heart. He used his own experience to tell everyone to cherish the past, the present, and the future. Cherishing the past meant cherishing the time on campus and keeping in touch with the students and teachers on campus. This was not only the biggest network for them to enter society, but also a good time that they would remember for the rest of their lives. After all, the 4 years in college were the most unrestrained and crazy time in their lives to pursue love. Cherish the present and do not give up easily. Whether it was a boy or a girl, they had to fight for love. Take advantage of this time when they were not afraid of losing and strive to win a good future for themselves and their loved ones. Cherishing the future meant cherishing their health. With health, there would be a future. This theme was very simple and very old. However, in Poplar Fruit's narration combined with reality, there seemed to be a new understanding. In the first 2 parts of Poplar Fruit's speech, he repeatedly mentioned Fong Beibei. How many students in Higashiyama University didn't know about this famous person from a few years ago? Even until now, when the news media talked about the campus bell, didn't they often mention Fong Beibei from Higashiyama University and Sister Milk Tea from Shuyama University? Fong Beibei's face was red. She heard Poplar Fruit's speech and put her love for him in a very important position. It was because of Fong Beibei's love and support for him that Poplar Fruit was able to put in more time and effort. Poplar Fruit even thought that without Fong Beibei, he would not have been able to achieve what he had today. This was the meaning of cherishing the present. Although Poplar Fruit really wanted to tell the college students facing the difficult moment of graduation that there's only hope if you persevere, when he mentioned Fong Beibei in his speech and looked tenderly at Fong Beibei in the audience from time to time, he made eye contact with her. The recording director put this scene on the 2 big screens on both sides of the stage, causing the students to laugh in unison. It was not jeering, but more understanding laughter, envy, and blessings. Among the graduates present, there were many fans of Poplar Fruit. They took out their phones, took pictures of this warm scene, and quickly uploaded it to the evening. Netizens began to repost and comment, "Oh, the PDA has reached here." Being watched by the audience, Fong Beibei was a little shy. Her face was red, as if she was drunk, and her ears were red. However, her heart was overflowing with happiness. So, Uncle did not tell me because he wanted to give me such a surprise. Chapter 13-14. Although it was a bit of a public display of affection, Poplar Fruit's speech still won the applause of the graduates from the 2 universities. In the past few years when he was in university, Yanghua, who was in the same school as him, had always been the idol of many students. Now, after listening to Poplar Fruit's speech, everyone felt that Poplar Fruit was actually the same as them in the beginning. They both came from university and were confused about society. If Poplar Fruit could do so well, they might be able to be like Poplar Fruit if they worked hard. Therefore, at the end of Poplar Fruit's speech, the enthusiasm of the whole audience was almost ignited. The graduates in gowns below the stage were excited, clapping their hands and cheering for their youth. "Your man is quite awesome. His speech is so passionate." Lu Ruhua was from the Northeast and always spoke in a domineering manner. Fong Beibei smiled and did not refute. She fanned herself with her degree cap. The gown was too hot and proudly puffed out her chest. Her mood of being unhappy because Poplar Fruit hid it from her had already disappeared. Of course, after Poplar Fruit's speech, the graduation ceremony continued. And, this time, it was the most important part of the degree conferment ceremony. The undergraduate, master's, and doctoral graduates went on stage one by one, shook hands with the principal, and received their graduation certificates and degree certificates from the principal. This part was somewhat ironic. After all, for most students after 4 years in the university, they had only seen the principal twice, the entrance ceremony and the graduation ceremony. Being in close contact with the principal, and even shaking hands with him, was probably the only time in their lives. Fong Beibei was a little nervous because she was clever and cute, and had prepared a small program for the principal early. This was different from her roommates simply asking for a hug. Fong Beibei secretly thought about it for a long time, and of course she also discussed it with Poplar Fruit at home. It was not the first time that the principal was flirted with during a handshake. As early as 2 years ago, when shaking hands with the principal, a student made a peace sign, and this photo caused a sensation on the internet. The netizens joked that this was a rock, paper, scissors that the principal could never win. With this kind of feeling, Fong Beibei waited in line. The line in front of her was getting shorter and shorter, and soon it would be her turn. Because she was nervous, she did not notice that Poplar Fruit on stage was also a little nervous. He secretly took out a small box from his pocket and hid it under the sleeve of his doctor's robe. Fong Beibei's 2 roommates, Lin Xingshan and Lu Ruhua, followed the previous agreement and sandwiched Fong Beibei in the middle. Lin Xingshan went on stage first, and after completing her ceremony, she would quickly walk down to make room for Fong Beibei to go up. When it was Lu Ruhua's turn, Lu Ruhua would slow down a step and separate the crowd behind her, leaving room for Poplar Fruit and the rest on stage. Fong Beibei did not know this. She just watched Lin Xingshan go on stage with her little heart pounding. She silently repeated her little thoughts in her heart, afraid that she would go blank and forget when she went up. Finally, Lin Xingshan shook hands with the principal and walked down the stage. The MC below the stage read out Fong Beibei's name. Fong Beibei was also a spontaneous person. She was nervous below the stage, but when she went up on stage, she calmed down. She secretly glanced at Poplar Fruit, and before they could make eye contact, Fong Beibei walked to the principal. Although she was not nervous, Fong Beibei still did not dare to look at the principal. She did not notice the admiration in the principal's eyes. Of course, the principal knew her. Of course, it was because of Poplar Fruit. However, Fong Beibei was still a little famous herself. She had won the first prize in 2 international competitions in a row, and she was even accepted as a disciple by a professor in the School of Mathematics. Fong Beibei, who had extraordinary talent in mathematics, was the treasurer of the School of Mathematics. The principal, who was standing in the middle, smiled and reached out his right hand. According to the procedure, Fong Beibei should shake hands with the principal and take a photo as a souvenir. However, Fong Beibei did not reach out her hand. Instead, she twirled her academic gown like a skirt and spread it out like a fan. What was she doing? Fong Beibei's face was slightly red. She held back her laughter and imitated the ancient Western ladies. She took a step back with her left leg, bent her knees slightly, and did a dance move. It was very familiar. Wasn't this the response that the girls made when they were invited to dance in the Western costume ball? Wasn't the principal's outstretched hand the same as a gentleman's invitation? The graduates below the stage all laughed out loud. After the victory sign, there were many different handshakes with the principal. However, they had always been imitated and never surpassed. Today, there was finally a classic photo. In the midst of everyone's laughter, Fong Beibei blushed shyly and shook hands with the principal. She took the certificate and was about to run off the stage. However, she was stopped by the principal. "Student Fong Beibei, please wait." This was the first time the principal stopped a student. Fong Beibei panicked. She thought that her rudeness had made the principal angry. She lowered her head in fear and turned around to follow the principal's instructions to stand in front of him. The whole venue was silent. Nobody knew when the melody of the school song had stopped. Everyone held their breaths. Those who did not know better would have thought that the principal was angry. In fact, the principal did not look like he was about to fly into a rage. He smiled and said into the microphone, "Student Fong Beibei, I asked you to stay because a student has a few important words to say to you. Are you willing to listen to him patiently?" The audience below the stage had already started to exclaim because they could see a person walking out from a main seat behind the stage. He had a tall and straight figure and a handsome and calm face. Poplar Fruit's appearance stunned everyone. Those who reacted quickly took out their phones. Yes, no matter what happened next, it would definitely be exciting. When Fong Beibei heard the principal's words, she was also stunned. She raised her head to look at the principal in surprise. However, from the corner of her eye, she could not help but turn her head. That familiar figure walked in front of her and seemed to cover her sky. No, it should be said that he became her sky. Because of Poplar Fruit's appearance, it was as if the entire venue of the graduation ceremony had lost its brilliance. Yes, in Fong Beibei's eyes, it was as such. Uncle? Why is Uncle walking out at this time? In just a short second, many thoughts flashed through Fong Beibei's mind. However, the principal's words, the microphone in Poplar Fruit's hand, and the gentle smile on his face made Fong Beibei's originally thumping heart race even faster. This time, she also seemed to have realized something. Chapter 13:15. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei looked at each other affectionately. He first bowed to the principal, then turned to look at the audience, raised the microphone, and said, "I'm very grateful to the school for providing me with such a good opportunity. I also want to say sorry and thank you to the students here. Today, I'm here to take up a little bit of your time. I want to fulfill my biggest wish in the past 4 years." Here comes the highlight. Even Fong Ping's parents, who were watching the ceremony on the second floor, couldn't hold back. They walked to the railing with Kiki in their arms and looked down. "What is Papa saying?" Kiki looked down curiously. She didn't understand, so she had to ask her grandpa and grandma. "Sure, listen quietly. Just now, I told you to cherish the time in school, cherish the lover in front of you, and cherish your beautiful future. And I, in the past 4 years, have to be grateful and cherish a person. Because of her, I went through the most difficult year of my life. Because of her, my life became happy and joyful. Because of her, in addition to the love of family and friendship, there is also the love of love and the love of all things in the world and my world." Poplar Fruit turned his head and looked affectionately at the girl in front of him, who was nervously grabbing the hem of his clothes, and said softly, "She is Beibei." Fong Beibei covered her red face with her hands, and emotional tears began to accumulate in her eyes. Her heart was beating wildly, and her mind was blank. It was as if she had come to a magical space. Only Poplar Fruit was looking at her tenderly and whispering softly. "I will never forget the encounter 4 years ago at the East Lake of the school." In fact, Fong Beibei couldn't hear what Poplar Fruit was saying, but she could vaguely predict what Poplar Fruit was going to do next. Gradually, Fong Beibei came back to her senses and heard Poplar Fruit's words clearly. "Beibei, I know that I'm too anxious to say this at such an important moment for you. However, I know that you're the lover that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. That's why I've been preparing for a month. Even though there aren't any fresh flowers or candles, there are so many teachers and students here to be our witnesses." Poplar Fruit handed the microphone to his left hand, and his right hand took out the small black box that had been hidden in his robe for a long time. He gently opened it. Through the big screen and camera, everyone present could see the big diamond ring in the box. Although it wasn't 10 carats, it was at least 7 carats. The big diamond-shaped diamond on the exquisite ring almost dazzling the whole audience. At this moment, Fong Beibei could no longer hold back her tears. The tears that had gathered before fell like a curtain of beads. She covered her beautiful face, but she didn't pay attention to wipe it. Poplar Fruit lifted the hem of his doctor's robe, knelt on one knee, and held the box with the diamond ring in one hand. He looked at Fong Beibei affectionately and asked softly, "What I want to say is, Beibei, will you marry me?" "Marry him?" The students below the stage shouted, and many female students were so moved that they couldn't help but shed tears. When Poplar Fruit said this, Fong Beibei's tears flowed more quickly. She never thought that Poplar Fruit would choose this moment to propose to her. She also never thought that Poplar Fruit would propose to her in front of so many people. "I will." At that moment, her heart seemed to be filled with happiness. She couldn't hold back her emotions anymore. She nodded vigorously, walked forward, and threw herself into the arms of Poplar Fruit, who had just stood up. No matter how much her heart surged, it only turned into this simple but heavy word: "You're my destiny." The familiar background music sounded, and the audience seemed to be infected by this happy music. Everyone applauded and cheered. Kiss, kiss. Poplar Fruit had just helped Fong Bei, who was so moved that she was in a mess up. He gently smiled and put the diamond ring on her, but the audience couldn't help but cheer. The atmosphere was so good that even the principal couldn't help but laugh and applaud. He was the main witness. To be able to see the future of Higashiyama University's two new stars of hope in the academic world together, his heart was filled with emotion and joy. Fong Bei raised her teary eyes and looked up at Poplar Fruit, the man she had entrusted her whole life to. Puffed. Fong Bei couldn't help but raise her hand to cover her mouth and laugh. On her tear-stained face, her smiling eyes were as moving as the crescent moon. Of course, they had to satisfy the wishes of the students who had given them so much support. Poplar Fruit gently lifted Fong Bei's face, tilted his head, and gently kissed Fong Bei's thin cherry lips. He didn't care that the academic hat on his head had fallen off. Of course, it was just a gentle kiss. Poplar Fruit reached out to pick up the hat, then pulled Fong Bei, who was still in a state of shyness. The two bowed to the principal and the professors, then turned to bow to the students below. Poplar Fruit picked up the microphone and said with a smile, "Thank you, everyone. Let's not waste any more time. Everyone, let's continue. Everyone, let's continue." In the midst of everyone's laughter, Poplar Fruit held Fong Bei's little hand and ran off the stage. Of course, the graduation ceremony continued, and Poplar Fruit ran off. Fortunately, there was no task for him on the stage. He held Fong Bei's hand, and the two ran to the back door under everyone's gaze. They didn't leave immediately, but fortunately, no one came to disturb them. "Hey, you bullied me." Seeing that no one was around, Fong Bei could finally relax a little. She saw that she plunged into Poplar Fruit's arms, clenched her little fist, and gently hammered Poplar Fruit's chest. She pouted and said, "How did I bully you?" Poplar Fruit smiled and hugged his girlfriend. "No, it should be his wife now. Who told you to hide it from me and not tell me? Everyone knows. I'm the only one who was kept in the dark. You're so bad." Fong Bei still looked unhappy, but in fact, her eyes were smiling, and her heart must be happy and sweet. Fong Bei was very smart, and now she finally understood why her roommates and parents were acting so strange today. It turned out that they were in cahoots with Poplar Fruit. Hee, isn't it to give you a surprise? Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched her nose. Fong Bei was so cute that Poplar Fruit loved her very much. Fong Bei leaned on Poplar Fruit's arms and couldn't help but raise her hand to carefully look at the diamond ring that she didn't notice on the stage, and happily said, "Okay, I forgive you. Hee, I can't believe that you're already married to me." Poplar Fruit touched his head and laughed. "How am I already married to you? We haven't even gotten the certificate yet." Fong Bei was like a little pig and snorted and said, "Then let's go get it tomorrow." Poplar Fruit lowered his head and whispered into Fong Bei's ear, "What a coincidence, Dad and Mom are both here. I'm so embarrassed." Fong Bei then remembered that her parents had been watching from upstairs. Her face turned red again, and she burrowed into Poplar Fruit's arms like an ostrich. Chapter 13:16. Just like that, they got their marriage certificate. At night, Fong Bei was so excited that she could not fall asleep. The next day, Poplar Fruit felt sorry for her and let her sleep a few more hours. In the afternoon, the whole family dressed up and rushed to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get their marriage certificate. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei took a few photos on the stage with their red booklets. They looked at the red booklets in their hands and smiled at each other. In fact, it was just a formality. The two of them had been living together as husband and wife for several years. However, this formality was also very important because after 4 years of running, their relationship had finally been officially confirmed. Of course, for Chinese people, getting a marriage certificate was only the first step of marriage. Without a grand wedding attended by friends and family, it would be embarrassing to tell others that you were married. However, the wedding was left to the two elders of the Fong family and Poplar Fruit's parents to discuss the auspicious date. The wedding location and process arrangements were also left to Fong Bei and Lin Xingshan, who happened to have a few months of vacation. Chun Amlin, who had just finished her confinement period and was bored, also joined Fong Beibei's group of girlfriends to design the wedding. Poplar Fruit was like Song Ji-won, being a hands-off boss. Of course, he was not free. On one hand, he had to record the show. Where is Dad going? On the other hand, he was busy with his thesis and the newly opened Eurasian language department in the new school year. Poplar Fruit's proposal aside, yesterday's proposal at the graduation ceremony had been shared by many students on social media sites, be it photos or videos. Poplar Fruit, who was already quite popular, proposed. This big news immediately blew up on the internet. Due to the fans reposting and many college students discussing excitedly, Poplar Fruit's proposal became the headline of Weibo and the news the next day. Almost everyone in the country knew that Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had proposed to each other. There were also some resourceful online media that obtained high-definition video recordings of the scene. From the high-definition, multi-angle video, netizens were finally able to see the entire process. The netizens focused on a lot of things. Some praised or questioned Poplar Fruit's meteoric rise. Some admired or objected to Poplar Fruit's choice to propose at the graduation ceremony. And some congratulated or gossiped about how Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had finally come to fruition after 4 years of dating. In this world, there were always some people who couldn't stand others doing well. As for these trolls, Poplar Fruit's principle was to ignore them. Instead of arguing with them, he might as well spend more time on his own studies. However, he had no choice but to answer some of the sharp questions raised by the media. The media's focus was sometimes very strange. For example, the number of carats of the diamond ring that Poplar Fruit proposed to, or whether Poplar Fruit was able to persuade a college principal to be his witness because of his strong background. These were not important. However, they questioned the timing of Poplar Fruit's proposal. One had to know that Poplar Fruit participated in the recording of Where Are We Going, Dad? And the broadcast of the show was only a few days later. From their point of view, the purpose of Poplar Fruit's proposal was somewhat thought-provoking. There were even media that directly pointed out that Poplar Fruit's hasty proposal was just a publicity stunt for Mango Station. There were still many people who believed in such a statement. Indeed, the timing was a bit too coincidental. No matter how one looked at it, Poplar Fruit seemed to be in a hurry to get married. Moreover, the arguments given by the media sounded very reasonable. Where Are We Going, Dad? Was a parent-child program. Even if Kiki was born in a single-parent family, it was a well-known problem. However, how would Poplar Fruit's girlfriend, Fong Beibei, be introduced in the program? Other children could happily talk to their mothers on the phone. Kiki couldn't be awkwardly left aside, right? Moreover, according to the trend of the first 2 seasons, there was bound to be an episode where all the mothers would appear on the stage. Then, what kind of identity would Fong Beibei appear in the program? Therefore, they vowed that Poplar Fruit's proposal was a publicity stunt for Mango Station. They had to confirm their relationship in order to cooperate with the program. There were even media that said that they had evidence of Poplar Fruit and Mango Station signing a mysterious agreement. The former was speculation, while the latter was complete slander. Poplar Fruit didn't need to worry about these media. Mango Station would handle it. However, Poplar Fruit still had to stand up and clarify this rumor that was getting more and more intense. When Poplar Fruit heard the news, it was already very late. As they were very happy to get the marriage certificate during the day, the family went to a restaurant to have a meal. Then, they sent Father Fong and Mother Fong home. After that, everyone went home to take a shower and rest. Poplar Fruit woke up in the wee hours of the morning and opened WeChat to receive a message from Mango Station's director. Poplar Fruit didn't care about what others said. However, many people were now questioning his relationship with Fong Beibei. This made Poplar Fruit a little angry. Poplar Fruit didn't hold a press conference, nor did he inform any familiar reporters. He just logged on to Weibo and posted a photo of himself and Fong Beibei holding their marriage certificate at the Civil Affairs Bureau. However, the body of the post changed a poem that everyone was familiar with to explain, 3 years ago, under the moon, my parents set a matchmaker in front of the hall. I'm willing to hold your hand for a lifetime. I'm willing to grow old with you in this life. I only regret that I'm young and troubled by the candles and books. But after the wedding, we'll spend our years together. When your black hair is done up, are you willing to put on 10 miles of red makeup? Today, you'll wear a red robe and tie your waist. Will my baby marry me? Didn't they all say that it was a show? Poplar Fruit used a poem to respond to the doubters. The marriage contract had been set 3 years ago. They were just waiting for Fong Beibei to graduate. Poplar Fruit choosing to propose at Fong Beibei's graduation ceremony was completely reasonable. How could it be a show? What's more, when Yangguo proposed, there wasn't a single reporter from Mango Channel at the scene. After the netizens kicked up a fuss, the official Weibo of "Where Are We Going, Dad?" had belatedly posted their blessings. If it was just for show, was there a need to react so slowly? Although Poplar Fruit's Weibo post was written in a literary style, many netizens still understood it. After all, Poplar Fruit later changed it to the popular "when my hair reaches my waist" style 2 years ago. Many of Poplar Fruit's senior fans also stood up to fight back against the doubters. They had followed Poplar Fruit for a long time. Many of them had even started following Poplar Fruit's Weibo before he became famous. They had the most say in the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. Not to mention Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei and Poplar Fruit got along well in the past few years. Low-key, except for winning consecutive awards 2 years ago, leading the pet hospital and stray pet rescue center, and occasionally being pulled into the public's perspective by the media because of Poplar Fruit's personal affairs. She kept a low profile most of the time and was just an ordinary girl. Housekeeping. Poplar Fruit had posted many photos on Weibo, all praising Fong Beibei's virtuousness. The reason why the house was always clean and warm, and why Kiki could grow up to be multi-talented, was inseparable from Fong Beibei's hard work. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were not husband and wife before, but they had been closely connected for a long time. Now that Poplar Fruit proposed, it was just a matter of time. More and more voices were supporting and praising Poplar Fruit, and the doubters from before were beginning to quiet down. Chapter 13-17. The storm quickly passed. After all, Poplar Fruit was just a non-entertainment industry figure, without a management company to support him. Even the most controversial topic was quickly covered by new news. And this incident had indeed inadvertently played a role in creating hype. Because of this incident, many people began to pay attention to the upcoming 3rd season of Where Are We Going, Dad? In the past few years, domestic variety shows had begun to steal the limelight of television dramas, becoming a force that could not be ignored. However, unlike other shows, Where Are We Going, Dad?, which focused on parent-child and warmth, had always had a good audience base. Therefore, even before the broadcast began, the 3rd season had already received a lot of attention from fans. The production team's official Weibo had been releasing some highlights. This was a bit like hunger marketing, whetting everyone's appetite bit by bit. This made the audience, who already had some understanding of the 5 children before this, look forward to their performance in the show even more. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the show to officially start broadcasting. Many viewers were waiting in front of their televisions early, waiting for the premiere to begin. Kiki also wanted to watch the premiere, but the broadcast time for this season was actually 10 o'clock on Friday night. It was too late, and the little girl was too sleepy to wait any longer. She could only watch the replay the next day. However, the hungry and thirsty audience could not wait for the replay or the online broadcast after 12 o'clock. They turned the television back to the Mango channel at 10 o'clock sharp. After a Xiao Duan commercial, the 3rd season of Father and Child's fantasy journey began. The beginning did not follow the script. The camera switched to a birthday party. The main character was, of course, Kiki. The little girl who was happily blowing out candles among her friends attracted the attention of the audience immediately. And the progress of the plot was actually skipping. Soon, it came to the scene where Poplar Fruit gave his daughter a gift. Kiki was pleasantly surprised to find that it was the "Where Are We Going, Dad?" mission card. Seeing the little girl so excited that her eyes were brimming with tears, the audience smiled knowingly. And as long as the netizens who participated in the popular event of recommending Kiki on the show last year saw this, They suddenly remembered the post they had posted back then. Although it was not necessarily due to their own efforts, they felt that their efforts had paid off. Furthermore, when they saw such a wonderful birthday present for their beloved little princess Kiki, everyone couldn't help but puff out their chests. Even the girls with shallow tear ducts couldn't help but be moved to tears. This was just a prelude. Soon, they entered the main body of the program. In fact, although each episode took a long time to record, in reality, it only took a little more than 2 hours to broadcast. It didn't take too long for the program to finish broadcasting, but the audience's discussion had only just begun. Compared with the unchanging second season, the third season gave the audience a refreshing feeling. The secret room test at the beginning gave everyone a preliminary understanding of the relationship between the 5 fathers and their children. Of course, each child's unique personality had become the audience's favorite topic of discussion. There was no need to talk about Noah. From the very beginning, he had become the favorite of all the big sisters and aunties. His handsome appearance and slightly melancholy eyes, as well as the off-topic words that came out of his mouth from time to time, were all his shining points. As for Luye's lack of effort and irresponsibility, it made many netizens feel that it was unfair for Nua. In the first episode, Nua had many exciting scenes. For example, he said, Guanyin Bodhisattva persuaded me to chat with you for a while. For example, he chose the most dilapidated cave for his father. For example, he started a fire in the cave and nearly burned the house down. These scenes created a clear image of him as a naive and sweet child. As for Xian Xian, Dejun, and Kong Kong, the 3 boys also received the love of different groups of viewers. Xian Xian's infatuation with big sister Kiki, his persistence with food, and his obsession with victory, as well as the cute little boy with short noodle hair, also received the love of the audience. Dejun's image to the audience was that of a warm and enthusiastic little boy. He was happy to help his little friends. He even took the initiative to take out his own medical kit when the adults got injured from playing with corn. There was also another boy, Big Brother Kong Kong. Don't be fooled by Chief Kang's cold and aloof appearance in the first episode. However, his performance made the audience realize that there was a warm heart hidden under his cold exterior. He would help the staff clean up the laptops that had fallen to the ground when no one was paying attention. He would take responsibility for the stool snatching game that he did not want to play and fight for the team's victory. Of course, when he lost, he did not want to reveal his regret and weakness. He would also not complain or give up when Nua Yi and Nua Yi's father misunderstood and took away his ingredients. Instead, he continued to work hard to find ingredients. Kong Kong's scenes were not as many as Nua Yi's, but it seemed that every scene was filled with his unique characteristics. Many of his excellent qualities were vividly displayed in these scenes. At the same time, like Nua Yi, he also received the love of many motherly fans. Finally, it had to be mentioned that Kiki gave the audience the biggest surprise. Her performance could be said to have surprised the audience. In the end, they could not help but give her a thumbs up. At the beginning, the little girl's image was that of a delicate little princess. Whether it was at home, in the secret room, or even in the car, Kiki was like a precious daughter who was always doted on and protected by her father's wings. When she got out of the car, her long princess dress was so cumbersome that she even needed Brother Xian Xian's help to hold it up. This deepened everyone's impression of her. Yes, although everyone liked Kiki's princess-like beautiful appearance and liked the way she acted coquettishly with her father, when they saw Kiki crying because she was afraid that her father would get hurt and did not want him to compete, when they saw her crying after losing the stool-snatching game, everyone began to worry that the little girl had been spoiled too much. However, when it came to finding ingredients, Kiki very well reversed everyone's impression of her. It turned out that Kiki was not delicate at all. She was more sensible than Brother Dajuan, who was 1 year older. In fact, in her small 3-person team with Brother Dajuan and Xian Xian, Kiki had always played the role of a little nanny, helping the 2 unreliable teammates carry the heavy basket. Kiki did not complain at all, nor did she complain that she was tired. Was this still the image of the delicate little princess in everyone's hearts? It could be said that from this moment onwards, Kiki's nickname of the little princess without princess syndrome was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Of course, Kiki's iconic scenes were not few. The little girl kissing the bell, and the beautiful moment she and Nuo had because of the bell, and the moment when Xian, who was running hard, saw her dream sister Kiki in the afterglow of the setting sun. These scenes were all precious scenes that the audience would remember for a very long time. Chapter 13-18. In the blink of an eye, another week had passed. The second episode was broadcast as scheduled. Due to the good reviews of the first episode, the third season of Where's Dad? Go! Managed to break through the encirclement of other programs like China's Top Voice. Furthermore, according to the news from Mango TV, after the third season of Where's Dad? Go! Was broadcast, the nationwide viewership rating was 58%, accounting for 82% of the viewership rating. It was ranked first in the same time slot, 6 times more than the second place. In the other summer variety shows that were broadcast at the same time, Where's Dad? Go! Also beat China's Top Voice by a small margin to take the lead. This year, Where's Dad? Go! Had a new breakthrough. It was broadcast live on foreign television stations. It was broadcast live in America, Malaysia, and other countries. It even landed on the internet in Southeast Asia and Belt and Road countries. The response of the program overseas was great, and the number of views kept climbing. It set a viewership record for many domestic programs overseas. Netizens in China gave it good reviews. Someone exclaimed, while they used other people's methods to invite big names and create a topic of discussion, Mango TV insisted on their own way of thinking. They didn't compete with big names, they competed with content. They didn't compete with hype, they competed with real popularity. They deserved a like. It was an exaggeration to say that they didn't compete with hype. Mango TV had many ways to create hype. Before the program was broadcast, there was already a lot of news. Were these really not Mango TV's hype? Even Poplar Fruit did not believe it. However, to put himself in their shoes, Where's Dad? Go! Was indeed much less hyped. Their main focus was still on the heartwarming, especially the word heartwarming, which frequently appeared in the audience's comments. The domineering CEO Kong took on the role of a big brother from the beginning. He seemed cold and taciturn, but he was actually steady and heartwarming, especially after the second episode, when the little boy helped the veteran grandfather up. That scene touched many viewers. One had to know that he did all of that spontaneously. From his performance in the first episode to the second episode, viewers who knew Kong's character would no longer question whether it was deliberately arranged by the program team. The image of the Chinese and French mixed-blood handsome Gwen Nuyi was deeply rooted in people's hearts. After the start of the second episode, he repeatedly called out Kong and Dajuan's names wrongly, which made everyone unable to restrain their laughter. Moreover, he was still as handsome as ever even when he wore the villagers' clothes. This made the older sister fans' hearts surge every time they thought of it. Of course, Nuyi was still the same talkative and imaginative Nuyi. When he and his father went to do that stupid thing of exchanging potatoes for a fridge, he was still able to exhibit his characteristic of drifting thoughts, making the audience extremely happy. Jun, who was a Virgo with a serious misophobia, had a violent conflict with his father in the new episode. This was something that no one in the audience had expected, but the production team did indeed want to maintain the authenticity of this scene and kept it in the show. Behind the argument between Jun and his father, both of them were feeling extremely guilty and self-reproachful. They did not know, but the audience could see it clearly. Especially after Poplar Fruit's persuasion, Lin Yongjian went back to apologize to his son. That scene deeply touched the hearts of the audience. What did it mean to be mindful? This was what it meant to be heartfelt. Of course, the image of the little glutton Xian also left a deep impression on everyone in the second episode. He was still the little chubby Xian who loved his older sister so much. He tried his best to persuade the store manager to change his favorite older sister Kiki into a beautiful princess dress. This scene moved many female audience members to tears, but also made many male audience members who were watching the show with their girlfriends suffer. Not only that, little chubby Xian accompanied his father on a long and arduous journey to sell fruit stuffing. Along the way, little chubby Xian gritted his teeth and persevered with his father. It was just like in the first episode when he rushed forward with the ingredients for his older sister's sake. Little chubby Xian's perseverance moved everyone in the audience. This was a 3-year-old boy with short noodle hair who could not be underestimated. In the second episode, Kiki gradually became more and more important among the 5 children. She was not the center of the 5 children, but she could be said to be an important bridge between them. No matter what kind of clothes the little girl wore, she looked extra fresh and beautiful. She was liked by every boy, and her cheerful personality could always make the atmosphere very happy. Looking at her performance during rehearsals and performances, the little girl could always inspire the enthusiasm of her friends. Even little chubby Xian, who had randomly joined the show, was given the role of Garfield by Kiki's inspiration. Of course, the little girl's personality, temperament, and versatility were also unanimously recognized by the audience. Although she was the only girl among the 5 children, the popularity she gained was not just twice as high. After the show, the little girl's name even appeared on the top search list. This also proved how wise the selection of this season's production team was. Before the show was broadcast, Poplar Fruit popularity was not low. But no matter how high it was, he was still a non-public figure after all. He was far from the point where he was a household name today. After the show was broadcast, Poplar Fruit and Kiki's popularity soared like a rocket. Kiki's popularity even surpassed her father's. This could be seen on the top search list, and the production team helped her to create a new real name Weibo, Yang Luoqi, in just a week, gathered millions of fans and popularity. Being famous was not necessarily a good thing. After the first episode was broadcast, Poplar Fruit felt a change. In the past, as long as Poplar Fruit did not create any news, their family could still comfortably go shopping outside. Now, as long as he and Kiki went out, they would be surrounded by fans. Even when they were walking in the neighborhood, they would meet people who wanted to sign autographs and take photos. Helpless, Poplar Fruit could only hide at home with Kiki. But fortunately, Poplar Fruit also needed to calm down and think about his half-completed thesis. He also needed to remotely host the establishment of the new Eurasian language department. Fong Bei was also very calm. She went out every day to discuss the wedding with a few of her best friends. Something had to be done here. The elders of the Yang family and the Fong family found a chance to meet. This time, it was Father Fong's and Mother Fong's turn to go to Poplar Fruit's hometown. Poplar Fruit also stayed in the countryside with them for 2 days before returning. The elders looked at the almanac and set an auspicious date, which was to hold the wedding in mid-August. There was still a lot of time to prepare, and Poplar Fruit did not need to worry about this. Fong Bei and Chun Anlin had taken the decision away from them. Poplar Fruit was at home, playing with his daughter. Recently, there was an app called Xiao Caxiu that became popular online. Its gameplay was very simple and subverted people's understanding. In the past, it was used to dub videos, but it was used to dub videos with audio subtitles. Poplar Fruit did not have the talent to play with such things, but Kiki loved it so much that she could not put it down. The young lady was definitely a natural actress. This was the comment of the netizens. She acted out each video to perfection and even asked her father to help record it and upload it to her Weibo. It was like a tornado that reaped a lot of popularity. Xiao Caxiu was very nonsensical, but it had to be said that many netizens now liked the young lady's performance. They sat on Weibo every day and waited for Kiki to post a new video. However, Kiki actually stopped updating because Kiki and her father sat on the plane again and rushed to Kaiyun Zenan. It was her father's 4th trip there. Chapter 1319. Sitting on the night plane to Kaiyun Province, Poplar Fruit's heart palpitated slightly, causing him to suddenly open his eyes. He turned his head to look at his daughter, who was sweetly immersed in her dreams, next to him. He breathed a sigh of relief. but his brows began to furrow. It wasn't a heart attack, but a mysterious premonition that belonged to Poplar Fruit. This feeling had saved Poplar Fruit many times. It could be said that he had turned misfortunes into blessings several times, and Poplar Fruit was able to survive because of it. But it seemed that this time, the feeling wasn't very accurate. Although he felt danger, it wasn't as clear as before. Instead, it seemed a little vague and unpredictable. He couldn't predict where this danger would come from. He had been vigilant. From the moment he got off the plane, Poplar Fruit talked and laughed with others, but his heart was always on edge. However, after being vigilant for a whole day, Poplar Fruit didn't notice any danger. There weren't even any strange people around him. They were all staff members of the Where Are We Going, Dad? Crew. At night, when he went to bed, Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled softly. Forget it, it's just an illusion. So, Poplar Fruit gently put down this strange warning. He knew that this feeling was too mysterious. Even science couldn't explain it clearly. Perhaps there would be times when it was wrong. Today, in the hotel, Poplar Fruit and Kiki saw the four fathers and children whom they hadn't seen for more than 2 weeks. This trip finally returned to the group of 5 fathers and 5 children. No one brought their children to play. After all, it was very difficult for one person to take care of 2 children. Last time, because she had to take care of Hao, Zoe Shimin had almost become invisible. In any case, the little girl was very excited to see her good friends. At night, she would take her father's hand and go everywhere. Early the next morning, everyone sat together on a small plane to Shidon Bana in Kunming. Just as they got off the small plane, everyone sat in the cars prepared by the program team outside Sa International Airport. Of course, they were sponsored by the sponsors. They passed through layers of jungle and drove to their destination. In the car, as usual, he would ask his darling some questions. The camera turned around, and the cameraman acted as a temporary director. He began to ask Kiki, "Which friend do you want to see the most?" In the camera, Kiki was wearing a pink butterfly headband, a fresh and beautiful sapphire blue chiffon floral dress, and even her soft long hair was combed into several delicate and distinct strands. She was like a graceful lady in ancient times who was still in the boudoir. She was imbued with her father's literary aura, which added a bit of freshness and elegance to the originally gentle and lovely little girl. The photographer's question made the little girl shy. She leaned against the side of the child's safety seat that was closest to her father. With a smile in her eyes, she said softly, "Brother Nui, why Nanoi?" Camera uncle continued to ask, Because Brother Nui is handsome." Kiki's little face was slightly red as she said, "Brother Nui is handsome? So in the end, looks are the most important thing?" Poplar Fruit couldn't help but laugh, which made the little girl even more embarrassed. "What about Xian Xian? Xian Xian is so good to you. He gave you a dress and a gem necklace." Poplar Fruit said, "And Brother Kong Kong, he took care of you the last time you went to sell little yellow ducks, right? I want to see them too." Kiki giggled. She looked at her father and said, "And Brother Dajuan, I want to see every one of them. They're all my good friends." Then the photographer asked Kiki, "Do you know where we're going this time?" "Shidon Bana." Kiki nodded. She had heard her father mention it yesterday. "What do you think of this place?" The photographer asked. "It's a very, very beautiful place." Kiki had a lot to say about this topic. The little girl gently waved her little hand and said, "There are many trees and many beautiful birds. Yes, and super beautiful peacocks. Their tails can become bigger." The little girl under the camera was very happy, as if she had seen it with her own eyes. She couldn't help but want to tell the photographer what she had seen. "Has Kiki been to Shidon Bana before?" The photographer turned to Poplar Fruit and asked in surprise. If she hadn't been there before, she wouldn't have so many things to say like Kiki. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. He said, "Yes, 3 years ago. I took her and a friend to travel by car, and we passed by Shidon Bana." She still remembers? The photographer's words were not so much a question, but more of a sigh. Kiki's memory was really good. She could still remember what she had seen when she was more than 1 year old. Shidon Bana was indeed a beautiful place, and her father's trip this time led them to Mengjinglai, a typical traditional village of the Dai people. Mengjinglai was very close to Myanmar. The clear Taluo River flowed from the west side of the village, forming a natural border. Of course, because of the strong characteristics of the Dai people's houses, lifestyles, and traditional customs, it had also become a well-known tourist destination. As soon as they got out of the car, before they could even sigh at the beautiful scenery that was like a spread-out painting, their attention was completely attracted by the sound of gongs and drums on the other side of the road. When they turned around, they saw a welcoming line that stretched for hundreds of meters. "How enthusiastic!" Lin Yongjian exclaimed. "Is this the legendary welcome line?" Poplar Fruit also laughed. The fathers each held their children's hands and walked forward. On both sides of the road, there were beautiful Dai girls. They stood neatly, singing and dancing, welcoming the distinguished guests from afar. Hee 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 hee. Being adorned by the beautiful big sisters, Chi-Chi smiled as she pulled her father's hand and shrunk her neck. She felt that it was very lively, but the big sisters were actually sprinkling water on her with leaves. They were so passionate that it was a little scary. "They are welcoming us." Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand and helped her comb her wet hair from time to time. The little girl smiled and said to her father, "It's so cold, but it's also very comfortable." Indeed, when water was sprinkled on the head and face, it was as if the stuffy air was isolated. It was very comfortable. As we walked forward, more customs greeted us. The beautiful Dai girls used their hands to smear yellow mud on the faces of the fathers and children. Suddenly, it was as if everyone's faces were covered with bandages. It was very fun. Not only were there beautiful Dai women lining the streets to welcome us, there were also handsome men playing drums and singing. There were also many children wearing bright Dai clothing running out to welcome our children. At this time, Yanghua also let go of her daughter's hand and smiled as she let them hold the hands of the Dai children and walk forward. This was a very happy beginning to a very happy celebration. Chapter 13:20. The village chief was like a chameleon. Every time they met, the village chief would dress differently. Last time, he was dressed as a monkey. This time, the village chief appeared in front of everyone in a Dai costume. Then, as usual, they exchanged greetings. Of course, the most important thing was to choose a house. But how should we choose? The village chief put his palms together. He had an expression that said, "Do you want to know? Come and ask me." After the test of 3 journeys, the fathers and the children were much calmer. They quietly listened to the village chief, waiting to see what strange tricks he would come up with to torment everyone. "I really want to ask, babies, is your father good to your mother at home?" The village chief asked. "Is this a house selection? What kind of question is this?" The children looked at each other in confusion. For a moment, no one answered. Yes, Kiki was the first to speak. She realized that the village chief was asking. The answer was very simple. After she said it, the other children also gave the same answer one after another. The fathers looked at Poplar Fruit and laughed. They did not tell Poplar Fruit about his proposal. It was not that they had forgotten, but they had already talked about it when they were chatting at the hotel last night. Then, the village chief asked again, "How is it good? What does your father do for your mother?" The children did not speak again. Kiki, the village chief, called the little girl to answer first. Oh, the little girl in a sapphire blue gauze dress was slender and elegant. Her soft black hair made her small face look even fairer. Her lips were red, her teeth were white, and her eyes were bright. The more he looked at her, the more he felt that she was as beautiful as a princess. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "Papa will hug Mama Mahaha." The fathers could not help but roar with laughter. They even deliberately made eeb sounds. Poplar Fruit could not help but laugh. He rubbed the head of the little girl who always leaked secrets. As expected, the children's ability to think independently was not very strong. After a round of questioning, Xian, Dejun, and Nua all gave the same answer as Kiki. Kong Kong, on the other hand, betrayed his father and said, "They're always arguing." Jun's face immediately darkened. The village head tried to smooth things over. But father must love mother very much, right? In the end, Kong paused and coldly said, "Impossible." Of course, he didn't know if Kong was spouting nonsense to provoke his father. However, Kong's answer made everyone laugh for a long time. Which father is helping mother comb her hair at home? The village chief finally revealed his true intentions and began to unveil the veil of the house selection game. "My father," Nua, he said excitedly. Behind them, Lu Yi was grinning from ear to ear. "My papa doesn't comb well, so Mama Ma won't let him come." Kiki giggled. "That's not true. Don't I always comb your hair well?" Poplar Fruit smiled helplessly. This daughter, why did she always expose her father's shortcomings? In reality, Poplar Fruit's hair combing skills were quite good. He could not compare to those girls who braided their own hair, but compared to the fathers, he still had an advantage. After all, he was a man who had practiced with his daughter's hair countless times. Sure enough, under the village chief's explanation, the house selection ranking was related to how the hair was combed. 5 fathers combed the hair of the 5 ladies of the Dai family. Within 8 minutes, whoever combed the best will have priority in choosing the house. The village chief said. Suddenly, a few fathers' faces fell. For example, Jun sighed and said, "That's difficult." "That's right. Usually, his hair was taken care of by his assistant. How could a burly man like him know how to comb his hair?" The village chief even asked a villager to demonstrate how to comb the hair for the fathers. It could be seen that the fathers were dizzy. When a villager expert combed the hair, his left and right hands twirled around and even tied the hair into knots. This series of techniques was simply shocking. Poplar Fruit was also in a difficult position. He had memorized the movements, but this was the first time he had come into contact with such a strange way of tying hair. As for how it could be done, Poplar Fruit's heart was beating like a drum. Hearing the village chief's instructions, the fathers turned their backs. The village chief asked the 5 ladies of the Dai family to stand to the side and let the fathers turn around to fight for their partners. Jun was the first to go to the youngest girl. He was still a little complacent as he felt that the young girl's hair quality was good and easy to comb. The remaining fathers' choices were actually similar. Poplar Fruit also casually found an elder sister with long hair to stand behind him. "My partner's hair is so long." Poplar Fruit smiled and said to the cameraman's camera, "You see, it's definitely easy to comb. Short hair can't be grasped, but long hair can be easily combed into various hairstyles." Poplar Fruit understood this principle. Poplar Fruit's words were not false. The elder sister's hair he chose was not as simple as Kiki's, which only reached her waist. This elder sister's hair reached her knees and her ankles. "Start." After letting the partners sit down, the village chief gave the order, and the fathers started to get busy. First, they used a comb to comb the hair. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Elder sister, how many years have you saved your hair? It's already so long." How many years was not the point. The point was to communicate more with her partner. Didn't you see that the hairdressers in the barber shop were all chatterboxes? "Papa, Annie's hair is so long." Kiki watched from the side. She couldn't help her father, so she said enviously, "There are several Kiki's hair that are as long as hers." Hey, don't shake it. "Sister, I just finished." "Why are you shaking it?" In addition to the sound of the children cheering and leaking oil, there was also Jun's anxious shouting. He realized that his partner was not good at all. She was too young and always moved around. Among the fathers, Jun's voice was the loudest. He was extremely anxious and kept shouting. The girl was also very interesting. She laughed and moved at the same time. "I rely on my face to make a living. Don't ruin me. I still want to have a boyfriend." The girl was indeed very beautiful. She was white and clean, with a little baby fat on her face. She looked very cute. However, Jun regretted it, because his partner was too uncooperative and too active. Therefore, things that looked beautiful were not necessarily the best. Just like Poplar Fruit, he also felt it. It seemed that the longest hair should be easy to tie up, but who knew that long hair also had its drawbacks? Ordinary long hair could be tied up in a circle, But Poplar Fruit's hair was tied up in a circle, and there was still such a long hair behind. What should I do? Waiting online, urgent. Chapter 13:21. Celebrating Evergrande's victory in the Asian Champions League. Oh, and Xiaohan finally has another small recommendation. The children did not keep watching their fathers comb their hair. 8 minutes was too long, and they soon lost interest. Nua, he dragged June to the back of the temple to look for Guanyin Bodhisattva, while Xian ran to talk to Kiki. Papa and I have been to Zaidanbana before. Xian could not keep up with Kiki's thinking speed, so he listened to her admiringly. Zaidanbana. Xian still could not pronounce the word accurately. There are very beautiful peacocks here. Xian, have you seen a peacock before? Kiki saw Xian shaking his head, so she described it to him. The peacock's tail is very long, and it can be open like a fan. Then you will see its tail. It is very beautiful, and there are many stars on it. Really? Xian was excited by Kiki's words, and he looked forward to it. Last 2 minutes. This will determine your living conditions. The village head's reminder made the fathers nervous. The children also went back to their fathers, and they were anxious for their fathers. Kiki could not stay idle. She squatted down and picked up the decorations and props prepared by the program group. She said, "Papa, what do you want? I can get it for you." The little girl was really considerate. "Okay, thank you, Kiki. Take whichever one you think is beautiful and get it to me." Yangguo replied as she hurriedly tied up her hair. Her hair was too long, so she had to tie it up a little more. The moves that Yangguo had just learned didn't seem to work, so she had to figure out herself. "Wow, I saw a peacock's tail." Chi suddenly cried out. She was holding a peacock's tail feather in her hand and shaking it. She was in a particularly good mood. This was the 3rd time she had seen a peacock's tail. The 2nd time was when she went to the zoo in Changlong, but that was a long time ago. Now, not only could she see it, but she could also touch it. "Really? Come, give it to Daddy. Continue looking and see if there are any other beautiful ones." Poplar Fruit had also reached the stage of decorating. He deftly took the peacock's tail feather from his daughter's injured hand and thought of a way to insert it into his coiled hair. "And this flower, I think it's very suitable for Andy's clothes." Kiki must have learned the color matching of clothes from Fong Bei. She helped her father find a yellow ribbon on the ground. Finally, it was time for the competition. At the last moment, Poplar Fruit also dared to insert the final decoration into Big Sister's hair. "Kiki, what do you think of Dad's hair?" Poplar Fruit felt that her hair was not as beautiful as she had imagined. She asked her daughter with a guilty conscience. "I think it's very pretty." Kiki found another peacock's tail feather and swayed it while smiling sweetly. Whether it was good or not, it was still up to the experts of the Dai tribe to judge. First, each Dai tribe villager whose hair had been coiled by the Dai tribe's father walked around 3 times to show their results. Then, after the experts' evaluation, the rankings of the Dai tribe's fathers were announced. Sure enough, Poplar Fruit did not get first place. The person who got first place was the legendary Lu Yi, who often combed his wife's hair at home. In 2nd place was Zhou Shimin, and in 3rd place was Poplar Fruit, who had suffered tragedy because of his long hair. It's fine. 3rd place is already very good." Poplar Fruit laughed and high-fived his daughter. Really, when he first started coiling his hair, he already felt that the situation was not good. Now that he got 3rd place, it meant that there was still hope. It might not be the worst house. Moreover, the first choice might not be the best. According to the previous 3 trips, didn't they rely on guesses to pick a house? Perhaps Lu Yi, who was the first choice, would still get the worst house. However, this time, the program team did not tease the Dai tribe's fathers anymore. The village chief took out the photos of the 5 houses and began to explain the characteristics of the 5 houses to the children. House 1 had a lot of beautiful flowers and plants. It looked very fresh and beautiful. Moreover, the village chief's next words made the children's eyes light up. "Moreover, there's a very beautiful peacock. I like this house." Kiki happily shook the peacock's tail feathers and said to her father, "Don't be happy too early. We might not even get chosen." Poplar Fruit rubbed his daughter's head and smiled bitterly. In all likelihood, it would not be Kiki's turn. Luyi had already said that the house belonged to their family, and Xian, who was in second place, also had a look of interest. House 2 had a lot of wine jars. House 3 was also very beautiful, because it also had a lot of flowers and plants. It was a paper house with the Dai tribe's characteristics. House 4 was terrifying. At first glance, they felt terrible. It was the feeling of having nothing. Sure enough, the village chief explained that it was the oldest house in the village. The fathers began to ridicule him. Can people live in this house? It doesn't even have a roof. There's no shortage of water. There's no electricity, right? Lin Yongjian was the only one who did not complain. His face was a little dark, and he had a depressed expression. There was no other reason except that he was in last place. House 5 had the most beautiful scenery. It had a unique large balcony. Standing on the balcony, one could see the China-Myanmar border not far away. Or it could be said that one could directly see the exotic scenery of Myanmar. Luyi had his eyes on House 1 or 5. However, this time, he was timid and did not dare to let Nua Yi choose casually. He held Nua Yi's hand and gave him some advice before letting him choose. Nua Yi chose House 1. Immediately, Poplar Fruit saw the peacock's tail feathers and his daughter's hand stopped swaying. He stretched out his hand and pulled his daughter back, letting her lean on his legs. He gently stroked the girl's long hair. It's all right. When there's time later, I'll bring you to Nua Yi's house to see the peacock. Kiki was a little sad, but luckily, the girl's reaction was not that intense. On the contrary, when Xian, who had been overwhelmed by Kiki's sister's words, saw his peacock room float away, he could not sit still and burst into tears. Indeed, he still had the temperament of a child. At this time, no one expected that seeing his brother crying so sadly, Nua Yi would actually give House 1 to Xian. This time, Luyi, who was originally overjoyed, was about to cry. He really had no moral integrity and pretended to cry. No, he really had it tough. On one hand, he had to take a step back for his brother Xian, and on the other hand, he had to comfort himself for being weak. Seeing the little boy go up and hug his father's neck to comfort him, he probably gave the audience a good impression of him. However, Zhou Shimin did not want to break the rules of the game, so he convinced his son to let Xian return House 1 to Nua Yi. As for Xian's second choice, he chose House 2. Why? Because it was a big pot. With a pot, he would not starve. Xian was indeed a little foodie. Chapter 1322. It was Kiki and Poplar Fruit's turn to choose their houses. Poplar Fruit let his daughter choose. Although he preferred the unique and exotic house in room 5, he didn't want to interfere with his daughter's choice. He let her choose the house she liked. Even if she chose the worst house, room 4, it didn't matter. Poplar Fruit had already experienced the test of the leaky adobe house and the open-air haystack. He felt that even room 4 would be heaven this time. Fortunately, the little girl was not interested in the old house that was so old that it was a little scary. She chose the number 3 paper house, which was also very beautiful with flowers and plants. Of course, when the village chief asked, Kiki gave a simple reason. She felt that the paper-making house in the photo was clean and tidy. It had a purple roof and an elegant appearance. Although there was no peacock, it was still a good house. Kong, who was in 4th place, chose room 5, which had a beautiful view, and left room 4, which was the oldest house, for Dejun had also experienced 3 trips and had improved a lot. Although he was a little depressed and unwilling at first, he still acted very carefree when he stood up to receive the photos of his house. The village chief asked him, "Do you think this house is good?" Dejun said straightforwardly, "Good." "Why is it good?" Lin Yongjian asked in surprise. "I'll choose whichever house I want," Dejun said domineeringly. It seemed that he had improved a lot. In the second trip, Dejun was crying because he ate watermelon the slowest and had to live in the same old house. This time, he could face it calmly. Next, it was time for the fathers to bring their children back to their rooms. However, the village chief also announced a task, which was to find the hidden task card in their rooms and complete it. In fact, this dive village wasn't as shabby and sloppy as other villages. On the contrary, every wooden building, brick building, and Buddhist pagoda seemed to have been meticulously maintained, clean and tidy. There wasn't even a speck of trash on the paths that the father and the children were walking on. The shade was like an umbrella, and walking on this path while enjoying the cool breeze, one couldn't help but feel happy. Along the way, the fathers and children stopped in front of their respective rooms to say goodbye. Poplar Fruit and his daughter also came to room 3 of the paper-making house. "It's so beautiful," the little girl couldn't help but exclaim. Wasn't it? Below the house was a stilt house that was very common in the South, while above there was a very simple Chinese eaves. The only difference between this house and the white walls and black tiles of the John and Water towns was that its tiles were purple, which was also a unique feature in the village. In the spacious courtyard, the owner had planted morning glories of different colors on the fence. At this moment, the morning glories were in full bloom, giving people a feeling of vitality. In the courtyard, there was also an ancient paper-making workshop. There were stone mortars for pounding and water troughs for soaking. Everything was available. On the first floor of the stilt house, there were pieces of canvas like rice paper drying. Of course, under the impact of modern factories, these handicraft workshops had long become history. It was believed that this family only kept them to add a historical attraction for curious tourists. After looking around, Poplar Fruit brought his daughter upstairs to see their room. The exquisiteness of the room was beyond the expectations of Poplar Fruit and Kiki. After being waxed, the golden wooden building looked like a palace under the reflection of the light. Because there was no other furniture, even the bed was covered with a mattress on a clean wooden floor. Therefore, the room looked very spacious. Living here, one could feel the comfort of a tropical forest. "It's so beautiful." With the help of her father, Kiki took off her shoes and walked in wearing socks. She could only hear her praise. The little girl couldn't help but gently grab the light muslin on both sides of her skirt. Like a little angel spreading her wings, she took small steps and ran back and forth in the room. Her bell-like laughter echoed in the spacious room. There was no need to look or guess. Just by hearing her voice, one could tell how satisfied the little girl was. Poplar Fruit also walked in and stood to the side with a smile as he looked at his daughter's happy face. He thought to himself that life was really about fate. Sometimes good things weren't necessarily good, and bad things weren't necessarily bad. This paper-making house didn't seem to be very important to many fathers. But when his daughter chose to come here, she realized that the conditions were actually so good. But then again, even if it was really bad, as long as Kiki liked it, then the bad could become good, just like last time at the Grape Gully. Poplar Fruit could only attribute it to the best things that suited him. When Kiki was almost done playing, Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and smiled. "Let's find a mission card that the village chief mentioned. Let's see where the village chief hid it." However, Poplar Fruit and Kiki didn't seem to be as lucky as Nua, and the rest. They found the mission card directly on the mosquito net. The little girl accompanied her father and turned the room upside down. There weren't many things in the first place, but they didn't find any trace of the mission card. "Come, let's go outside and take a look." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted his daughter's head. However, Poplar Fruit also searched for a long time outside, but he didn't find any trace of the mission card. Then he saw his daughter standing at the side of the table doing something. "Papa, what's this? It looks like there are many snakes drawn." When Kiki saw her father coming over, she pointed to a few calligraphy and paintings on the table for him to see. "But I think it's very nice." Needless to say, the words couldn't be understood. However, the paper was made by the owner himself. The surface of the paper was very rough. This was also the drawback of the ancient handmade paper method. Poplar Fruit glanced at it and smiled. "It's okay. It might be the work of the owner of this house. Let's go. We still have to look for the mission card." He deliberately lifted the calligraphy and paintings gently, in case he didn't notice the mission card hidden below. "Okay." The little girl nodded obediently, turned around and bounced, and wanted to continue looking for the mission card with her father. She still looked very energetic. As a girl with vitality, should be like this. It should be Dai language. Poplar Fruit hadn't learned Dai language before. The Dai language that the village chief taught in the opening speech was very simple, but Poplar Fruit could only guess the meaning from the context. He really didn't know how to speak it. Wait, Poplar Fruit suddenly raised his eyebrows. He felt that it wasn't that simple. According to the experience that Poplar Fruit had accumulated from watching Detective Conan for so many years, these things wouldn't appear without any evidence. Although this was a paper-making house, why didn't the ink on the dried rice paper be framed and hung up? Why were they just placed on the table like this? Why were they padded with stones? Poplar Fruit had been searching for more than 10 minutes, but he didn't find a single card in the whole yard. Where was the mission card hidden? Poplar Fruit couldn't help but look at the calligraphy and paintings again. Chapter 13:23. Papa, let's go find a task card, not play. After walking for a while, the little girl turned around and found that her father was not following her. She ran back and put her little hand in her father's big hand, ready to pull him away. Papa is not playing. Papa thinks that there may be clues hidden in these words. Poplar Fruit let go of his daughter's hand and patted Kiki's little head gently, but his eyes were still focused on the calligraphy and paintings. Chi-Chi was also curious. She squeezed her way in and squeezed herself between her father and the desk. She leaned her body against her father's thigh and blinked her long eyelashes. She looked at the scribbles in puzzlement. Sometimes, when one learned a lot of languages, it was as if a code book was formed in one's mind, even if it was a language that he had never learned before. Poplar Fruit could infer some traces of it. No one could see it, so they thought that Poplar Fruit was just frowning and looking at it blindly. But in fact, at this moment, Poplar Fruit's brain was like a computer that had been programmed. Countless languages and words were broken into pieces and intertwined like a spider web, gradually beginning to piece together the appearance of the calligraphy and paintings in front of him. Poplar Fruit could only hear some strange notes in his mouth, and then he pointed to the first 3 characters in the first line of the first calligraphy and said in surprise, "Task card? Task card, it's really a task card. Where is it? Where is it? Why can't I see it?" The little girl was anxious. She put her hands on the table and stood on tiptoe to look, but she saw nothing. It was still those strange calligraphy and paintings. "This is a task card." Poplar Fruit smiled, gently patted the first calligraphy and painting, and explained to his daughter, "The task card is not necessarily what we usually see. The village chief is also bad, writing the task card in Dai language. If it wasn't for your father, others might not be able to find it even after a few years." The choreographer, who was next to the cameraman, was shocked by Poplar Fruit. She followed Poplar Fruit and Kiki with the task. After all, the task card of the paper-making workshop was too difficult to find. In order to ensure the smoothness of the program, she was prepared to give Poplar Fruit a hint when he was at his wit's end. "Teacher Yang, you can read Dai language?" The choreographer asked in surprise. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No, of course I can read it. How could I have looked at it for so long? How could he translate it?" The choreographer looked at Poplar Fruit in confusion. Poplar Fruit didn't keep her in suspense. He explained directly to the choreographer, "Although I don't understand Dai language, I still know the origin of Dai language. It should be said that it originated from the ancient Indian script, which was passed down along with Buddhism. However, after thousands of years of development, it has changed a lot. As a master of linguistics, Poplar Fruit had a deep understanding of the origins of languages all over the world. This wasn't knowledge. Instead, it was like a historical classic. Poplar Fruit had read it and memorized it. He spoke frankly in front of the camera, but from the perspective of modern languages, the writing habits of its language are very similar to Burmese, Thai, and even Laotian and Cambodian. Through my observation, I can still analyze and deduce the meaning of some of the words. However, the light of wisdom in Poplar Fruit's eyes grew brighter and brighter, and the smile at the corner of his mouth was like a spring breeze, very warm and comfortable. The writing on this is very strange. The grammar used should be Chinese. So with these 2 clues, it's easier for me to deduce. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "If I'm not wrong, These 3 words mean a task card. I'm convinced. It was undeniable. No wonder he could learn more than 10 or even dozens of foreign languages. The audience saw it with their own eyes and almost knelt down to Poplar Fruit's linguistic talent. It was no wonder that Poplar Fruit could be in charge of a Eurasian language department that had more than 10 unpopular languages at the age of 30. Who else could compete with Poplar Fruit? It's not that there aren't any, but such talents are hard to come by in 10 or 100 years. Any one of them is a treasure that the major universities wouldn't let go of. Higashiyama University can't steal from the corners of Shuimu and Beijing University. In front of the camera, Poplar Fruit was still excitedly deciphering his task card. But, Poplar Fruit's expression began to become a little strange. Why were they all connected words? Could it be that he translated it wrongly? And Poplar Fruit guessed the meaning of the last 4 words, but he still didn't give up and translated, "It's useless." Sure enough, Poplar Fruit speechlessly picked up the painting and pointed it vertically at the director and the camera. He looked at her with some resentment and said word by word, "Task card, but it's useless. Dear, are you playing with us?" Chi-Chi was still craning her neck to look at the painting, but the audience in front of the TV had already fallen to the ground laughing. But it was useless. How could the program team be so evil? "Kiki, let's go. Let's go home. We don't want to play anymore. This is playing with us." Poplar Fruit looked at the little girl who only knew how to giggle and didn't know what was going on. The director covered her mouth and laughed. There are still a few more pictures. This scene was later cut out of the program. What was left was Poplar Fruit helplessly continuing to translate the next few pictures. Although it took a lot of time to deduce, Poplar Fruit finally translated it. The later it was, the faster it was because there was context to deduce. The students who had done closed tests should have this experience. Finally, God didn't disappoint those who worked hard. Poplar Fruit finally finished translating the content of the task card. Please put on the clothes prepared by the program team, and then go to Bayleaf Academy. Master Bayleaf Academy? Where is Master Bay's Academy? Chi-Chi asked curiously when she heard this. It's Bayleaf Academy, right? Bayleaf Academy is over there. Next to her, a dyed girl who was holding a child answered with a smile. Thank you, sister. The little girl was very sweet. Let's go and change clothes. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, You're wearing this big dress. It's time to change it. The dress was only for the appearance. There were still missions later. Wearing a dress would definitely be a burden. After 3 trips, Poplar Fruit, who was already considered a wily old fox, figured out the rules of the program team. Yes, I want to change into the clothes that I told Papa yesterday. Kiki was very happy when she talked about changing clothes. The little girl inherited the nature of every girl. She couldn't wait to change into beautiful clothes often. It would be best if she didn't wear the same clothes every day. Of course, this was an extravagant request. No, we want to wear the clothes prepared by the program team. That's what Dad said when he read the task card. Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand and went upstairs with a smile. Okay then, she wasn't that picky. Chapter 13:24. They're all white. Do they look good? Papa looks good. Hee. In the room, the camera was covered. Poplar Fruit and his daughter changed into the clothes prepared by the program crew before walking out. Walking down the stairs, the cameraman and director waiting outside turned their heads to take a look. Not only did their eyes light up, but the lens of the camera was also shaken. So handsome. At this moment, there was only one word left in the hearts of the audience. Handsome. Yes, look at this white gown that was like what scholars used to wear, not that there were no pants. It just so happened that Poplar Fruit's tall and straight figure of 188 meters was shaped like the elegant scholar Tang Bohu who walked out of the legend. The warm smile hanging on the corner of his mouth even made every girl in the audience unable to help but feel excited. Of course, Poplar Fruit's smile was just a smile that was amused by his daughter. He didn't think so much of it himself. However, after Poplar Fruit put on the white gown, his scholarly aura was fully reflected. If he held a book in his hand, perhaps the girls would not be able to help but dream of such a senior brother who would push them against the wall at night. Really, Not everyone could wear white clothes. Many people wore white shirts that were superfluous. Only a man like Poplar Fruit, who had a good figure, good looks, and temperament, could bring out its characteristics. Kiki also didn't suit the white gown very well. It wasn't that it didn't fit, but after the little girl wore the gown, she was like Zhu Yingtai, who disguised herself as a man and sneaked into the academy. She was delicate and moving, but lacked a heroic spirit. Poplar Fruit returned his daughter with a simple ponytail. Looking from the front, the delicate little girl wearing a boy's clothes looked a little unnatural. Of course, Kiki was born beautiful. With a rosy and delicate face, a pair of big eyes that were always bright, and delicate and beautiful facial features. No matter what kind of clothes she wore, it was difficult to hide her beautiful face. It turned out that Bayleaf Academy was the place where they had been playing the combing game. Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand and walked over. He saw that everyone had arrived. "Poplar Fruit, why are you so late?" The fathers welcomed him with a smile. It was really a long gown worn by men in ancient times. Looking at Nua, and the others, the little boys looked much better in it. Poplar Fruit waved his hand with a smile and said, "You don't have to say it. Our mission card was the hardest to find. It took me a long time to translate it." Until now, Poplar Fruit still thought that this mission was specially designed for him, a great translator. He had never thought of asking the locals for help as a workaround. On the other side, Dejun, who shared the news with everyone he met, found Kiki. He shouted happily, Kiki, let me tell you. We have chickens in our chicken coop, and they are fighting cocks. Have you ever seen a fighting cocks?" Poplar Fruit smiled and asked Lin Yongjian, "How is it? Your house seems to be pretty good?" "It's an old house. It's very old, but compared to Lu Ye's cave and your two houses, it's much better," Lin Yongjian said with a smile. "I think Dejun is adapting quite well. He's so happy," Zhou Shimin said with a smile. "It looks like he has found something he likes. No matter how bad the environment is, he won't find it unbearable," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He had a deep understanding of this point. Dejun liked those strange animals, so he was very happy living in an environment like Room 4. As for Kiki, she liked to look at the stars. The logic was the same. What kind of mission was it that made them dress like that? The village chief did not wait for everyone to react. He handed the 5 fathers and 5 children to the abbot of Bayleaf Academy. Through the abbot's slow introduction, the next mission was to learn the Zen cultivation of a Buddhist temple. While preparing, Zhou Shimin approached Poplar Fruit and asked softly, "You learned Taiji Fist. Is that all right?" The concept of Taiji Fist originated from Taoism, and in modern wuxia novels, Taiji Fist was even considered a martial art that belonged to Taoism. However, Poplar Fruit was different. He only practiced martial arts and did not become a monk. He did not even know anything about Taoism. Instead of saying that he was a religion, it was better to say that Poplar Fruit was an orthodox atheist. Hence, Poplar Fruit said with a relaxed smile, "It's fine. It's just nice. I can also see the Zen cultivation of a Buddhist sect." In comparison, Poplar Fruit was more interested in the Zen concept of Buddhism. This was because Buddhism did not control a person's thoughts. It emphasized that a person should comprehend themselves and think about their own gains and losses. Didn't he see many famous people who practiced Zen? For example, the legendary basketball coach Phil Jackson, who was known as the Zen Master, or the late Steve Jobs. The fathers are over there. The children are over here. Under the guidance of the monk abbot, the fathers and children were divided into 2 rows and sat down. There were 2 rows of young monks in red robes in the middle. Some were under the shade of trees, and some were under the sun. Poplar Fruit felt that since they were here, they should fully experience Zen cultivation. He took his daughter and let her sit in the first position. Of course, this was also the most sunny place. "I want to be with Papa." Kiki was not afraid of the sun. She was a little scared when she saw these monks with one arm bare. She had always wanted to shrink under her father's wings. The little girl pouted and sat down reluctantly. "Papa is on your left." Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's little head with a smile and said, "Listen to the abbot. Papa can see you from here." "Why do you call him abbot?" Before Kiki could ask, her father had already walked away and sat down in his row. The little girl pouted and had to sit down obediently, because the abbot above did not smile and looked very fierce. After Poplar Fruit returned to his seat, he suddenly heard a childish voice shouting from behind, "Go to sister." He turned around and saw Xian running all the way from his seat to the front. Of course, there was no place for him in front, but Xian still wanted to sit next to Sister Kiki, so he directly sat on the grass. The abbot walked over to the restless Xian and said, "Sit down. Everyone has their own place." This scared Xian to death. She got up and ran back to the room. "You must not listen, not speak, not move. Also, you must not look." The abbot stood beside the children and said softly. His voice was not loud, and his Mandarin was not standard, but his voice was very penetrating. Everyone could hear him clearly. Kiki's sitting posture was actually not very accurate. But after Poplar Fruit signaled with his eyes, the little girl followed suit and sat cross-legged like the monks next to her. But her round eyes were still restless. She looked at her father for a while, then looked at the abbot, who seemed to be very serious. Chapter 13:25. The meditation lasted for about half an hour. In this half hour, the sun was shining. Poplar Fruit didn't think much of it. He closed his eyes slightly, and his eyes focused on his nose focused on his mouth, and his mouth focused on his heart. It passed in a while. He wasn't as worried as the other fathers. Since he had accepted the abbot's guidance, Poplar Fruit let his daughter go and train herself. The adults could persevere, but how could the child sit there peacefully? They did encounter many problems. Among them, there was Xian, who was scratching his feet and moving around. He was reprimanded the most by the abbot. There was Kong, who fearlessly asked nonsensical questions. There was Dajuan, who didn't sit well. There was also Nu Yi, who fell asleep while sitting. Kiki was not exempted from a blame. She was indeed obedient and didn't wobble like her previous personality. But the sun was too strong, and the girl's bangs were wet with sweat. Sweat slid down her forehead, hanging on her long eyelashes, trembling, and slid down her perky little nose. If she didn't wipe it off, she would feel as if ants were crawling on her face. It was unbearably itchy, so Kiki couldn't help but raise her hand to wipe it off. It was said that women were made of water. Kiki was also made of water. After wiping her sweat, it seeped out again. The abbot caught her the second time. "Kiki, don't move your hands. Put your hands on your legs like this." The abbot, sitting on top, looked at the girl. His voice was soft, but very serious. This made Kiki not dare to move anymore. But seeing the girl's beautiful face wrinkle up, as if she was suffering from the sweat, that pitiful look made the audience's heart ache. After the meditation ended, Poplar Fruit's heart ached. When the monks removed most of the cushions, he took the opportunity to wipe his daughter's sweat with his sleeve. But he couldn't be too heartbroken. Otherwise, he would have suffered for nothing. "You're great, Kiki. Dad thinks you're great." Poplar Fruit squatted down and pressed on Kiki's shoulder. He smiled at his daughter and said, "Because it's not easy for you to hold on for so long. Daddy is very happy." Her father's praise made Kiki smile happily. Her little face was slightly red from the sun, and now she didn't continue to frown. After the meditation, the abbot began to teach the children the principles of respecting their parents and being filial to their parents. He taught them to kneel on the cushion and pay their respects to their father. To be honest, as a teacher, Poplar Fruit had never advocated this custom of kneeling. However, Poplar Fruit agreed with the abbot's words. Through these rituals, the children would learn to respect their parents. They would reflect on their own mistakes while kneeling and praying. Once in a while, Poplar Fruit felt gratified when he saw that his daughter seemed to have become more sensible. Next, the abbot looked at the weather and announced the beginning of the noon fast. "What is Jacques?" After following her father to get a bowl, the little girl was very curious. She licked her little tongue and asked, "Is it something delicious?" Poplar Fruit smiled and shook his head. "No, Jacques means vegetarian. In other words, without our lunch, there will only be vegetables and no meat." "No meat?" Kiki, Xian, and June all exclaimed. In the minds of these three little meat eaters, there was no such thing as a meal without meat. How could they eat it? The abbot looked over, and the children all fell silent. The impression that the abbot had left on them was too scary. After using his gaze to silence the children, the abbot began to announce the rules. Now we will start eating. You must keep quiet and follow the group. You will get as much as you eat. The sun was a little hot. Poplar Fruit leaned to the side and used his body to shield his daughter from the sun. Fortunately, the group of monks in front moved quickly. Soon it was their turn. Nuo got a lot of food, but not much rice. Xian got a lot of rice. Zhou Shimin was worried that Xian couldn't finish, so he stopped him. Get yourself. You don't need father's help, the abbot reminded. Dejun in front was the same. He got a lot of rice, but only a few cabbages. Dejun couldn't get his appetite up when he saw the vegetables without any fat. It was Kiki's turn. Get whatever you like, but get as much as you eat. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but lower his head and whisper to his daughter. Chi-Chi nodded obediently. Just as she was about to reach out to touch the spoon, the abbot in front of her softly scolded, "You can't eat now. You have to eat together later." The little girl was so scared that she retracted her hand. Actually, the abbot was talking about Xian. Seeing the fragrant rice, Xian couldn't help but pick up the spoon. He even lowered his head to take a small bite. In the end, he was caught by the abbot. Kiki continued to scoop rice. There were many types of vegetables. There were vegetables, cabbages, cucumbers, and carrots. Poplar Fruit watched as his daughter got the rice. He was just messing around. Luckily, Kiki wasn't picky. She got a spoonful of each dish. Soon, the bowl was filled with all kinds of vegetables. Get as much as you eat. The abbot's eyelids twitched when he saw Kiki get so many vegetables. He couldn't help but say again, it wasn't that the monk was stingy. It was just a few dishes. It wasn't that bad. But this time, the abbot wanted to teach the children good eating habits. They couldn't waste food. At the place where the fathers and children were gathered, they saw that Kiki got so many dishes. It was even more than what Nuoi got. They asked Poplar Fruit anxiously, Kiki got so many dishes. Can she finish it? They were all old foxes. The five fathers naturally understood what get as much as you eat meant. If she couldn't finish it, she might be punished. Kiki was the child that the other four fathers liked. Of course, they couldn't help but show some concern. Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter, who was happily holding a big bowl of vegetables. He smiled at the fathers and said, "It's okay. She's hungry too. She can finish it." Poplar Fruit knew his daughter's appetite very well. There was no meat. This little bit of food was probably just enough. Finally, they reached the temple hall. Xian sat next to Sister Kiki as he wished. The children sat in the first row. The father sat in the back. In front of him was the abbot. Behind him was a row of monks in red robes. Just like when they were meditating, everyone put their food in front of them and sat cross-legged. They even put their palms together and closed their eyes. They listened to the abbot recite the rules. When eating, everyone must sit properly. Then, keep quiet and don't talk. The children had a lot of small movements. Xian couldn't help but open his eyes and look around. The abbot paused for a moment before saying, "You can start eating now." They could finally eat. The children and the fathers sat cross-legged for the first time in their lives. They began to eat. Wait, was it that simple? Chapter 13:26. It was time to eat. At first, Poplar Fruit only held the bowl in front of him, but his attention was on Kiki. It was the first time that Kiki was eating in this position. When Kiki was young, she was very difficult to please. In the end, it was Fong Bei who found a way to deal with her. Of course, Kiki was now able to hold her own chopsticks and eat. Perhaps because of her rapid growth, she was growing taller every day. When the little girl ate, she was just like Xian, a pure foodie. She didn't need her father to serve her. However, when eating in the temple, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but worry about her. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit saw that his daughter was awkward for a while before she finally found the right position to hold the big bowl. Then, she used a spoon to scoop up the vegetables and ate happily. Poplar Fruit secretly sighed in relief. Thank goodness, the the little girl was still obedient. The one who ate the fastest was Xian. Little chubby Xian didn't take much when he was filling the bowl, but he ate very quickly and took first place. The second place was none other than Kiki, who filled the most food. Although the little girl was as slender as a chopstick, she ate quickly and a lot. Although there were no meat dishes in the vegetarian meal in the temple, the vegetables were made to suit Chi-Chi's taste. Later on, she ate all the rice grains in her bowl. The little girl turned her head and stuck out her pink tongue to lick her cherry lips. She flipped the big bowl in her hand over to show her father. She really ate all the food. Poplar Fruit gave his daughter a thumbs up and said softly, "When you're done, put the bowl down and sit for a while." He also sped up his eating. The fathers didn't have much to say. The main thing was that they had to look at their children's eating speed. The audience in front of the TV probably didn't expect that the ones who ate the fastest were the youngest Xian and Kiki. Fortunately, the third person who finished eating was Kong. He saved the big brother's face. But there were only 2 children left, Nuo-E and Dejun. Nuo-E had packed too much food just now, and he did not have a huge appetite like Kiki. So as he ate, he felt that he could not eat anymore. If it was at home, the little boy would definitely not be able to eat. Luyi had also told the fathers about this. It turned out that Nuo-E would leave quite a bit of food at home. Dejun was even easier to understand. Ever since the first episode of the show, at Dejun's house, the audience knew that Dejun was a picky eater. Moreover, at home, he would need his parents to feed him before he could finish a meal. This time, he was eating by himself, and it was the kind of meal without any meat. Lin Dajuan, who was a carnivore, found it hard to swallow from the first bite. Later on, he ate slower and slower. This wasn't a solution. Everyone was looking at Dejun and knew he was still fine. He was still trying his best to eat, but Dejun was eating with a frown. It was as if he was eating Chinese medicine. Lin Yongjian could not help but lecture his son, saying, "They said it many times just now. How much you eat, how much you get. Why didn't you listen?" Seeing that Dejun was unhappy with his father criticizing him in front of so many good friends, the abbot stood up and said, "The children who have finished eating can go wash the dishes with their fathers. Those who have not finished eating can continue eating." He paused and said, "Later, the children who eat slowly will have to follow the master to clean the pagoda." What? Luyi felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He opened his mouth wide in shock. Luyi followed the other fathers out, leaving Nuo-E to continue eating alone. As for Lin Yongjian, he was worried and stayed behind to accompany his son. It's over. After Luyi walked out, he smiled bitterly and shook his head at the other fathers. "We got too much food. How can the children eat it?" Hujun said in hindsight. At this moment, the abbot also came out. He led the fathers to the tap and instructed the fathers and children to wash their bowls clean. "You have to wash it yourself." Poplar Fruit saw his daughter subconsciously looking at him for help. He smiled and said softly. In fact, Kiki knew how to do many things. Her family also let her wash fruits and so on. However, the little girl was always used to relying on her father. She wanted her father to help her with everything. It was also good for her to train here. At this age, she could learn how to solve problems by herself. After Kiki finished washing the bowls, her sense of accomplishment soared. She energetically jumped and pulled her father's hand and said, "Papa, I think the food here is very delicious. I also like to eat. I like the rice here. The rice here is very delicious." Hearing his sister's words, Xian could not help but echo. Little chubby Xian seemed to have found a like-minded partner. His 2 chubby little arms waved. He came out. He showed the bowl in his hand to his father as if he was presenting a merit. He really ate it clean. The juice in the bowl was drunk clean, and all the rice grains were licked clean. Good. Luyi praised his son in a low-key manner and brought him to wash the bowls. His fate was still up in the air. Finally, not too long later, perhaps because he was stimulated by Nuo-Yi's meal, Dejun suppressed his resistance towards the rice and finished the rest of the food. Lin Yongjian brought Dejun to wash the bowls. His father and the children stood in a row, waiting for the abbot's orders. Their studies in the temple had been completed. The abbot said a few words of encouragement to the children. Then he looked at Dejun and softly said, Dejun, stay here and follow the master to sweep the pagoda. Daddy will wait here. The other children and Daddy can go back and rest first. Dejun felt that he was being reprimanded. His eyes reddened and he was about to cry. However, he held it in. Dejun had gone through 3 trips and gradually learned how to control his grievances. He still wanted to say something, but Lu Yi quickly pulled him away. It was not easy for him to escape punishment. Did he still want to send himself up? The other fathers were not in a hurry to leave. Hu Jun and Kong Kong still wanted to stay and wait for Lin Yongjian and company. Kiki was kind-hearted. Seeing her good friend, Brother Dejun, being punished, she stood there motionless. She looked at Brother Dejun with sadness. What's the matter? Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's head and asked gently. Kiki turned her head to look at the terrifying abbot. She was struggling in her heart, wondering if she should ask the abbot to exempt Brother Dejun from his punishment. This is a process that Brother Dejun needs to learn and grow. Don't worry. The master will take good care of Dejun. Poplar Fruit gently consoled his daughter. Lin Yongjian finally let Dejun follow the master to sweep the pagoda. However, he was still worried about Dejun and secretly followed. Before he left, he persuaded Hu Jun and his son, as well as Poplar Fruit and his daughter, to leave. Perhaps under the guidance of a wise abbot, Dejun could grow a lot. Poplar Fruit looked at Dejun, who was walking toward the pagoda with the master abbot. He nodded in his heart and pulled his daughter home to rest. Chapter 13:27. Accompanied by the chirping of cicadas and the singing of birds, Yanghua and Chi-Chi took a comfortable afternoon nap in the beautiful papermaking room. In the afternoon, Kiki changed into a pink short-sleeved t-shirt with a cute little lamb printed on it. Of course, it couldn't be Pleasant Goat. The program crew had discussed with Poplar Fruit to not mention Pleasant Goat as much as possible. After all, Pleasant Goat didn't pay the program crew any advertising fees, so how could they advertise it for free? As for her pants, Chi-Chi was wearing off-white casual pants that just reached her knees. Although they weren't hot pants, the little girl's slender calves were still enough to make people envious. The ratio between her long legs and slender waist was enough to make many girls envious. Of course, this outfit wasn't as pretty as the light muslin dress Kiki wore in the morning, but there must be a series of competitions in the afternoon. Changing into this comfortable and relaxed outfit made it easier to move around. When they arrived at the gathering point, Poplar Fruit saw Lin Yongjian and Dejun. The children were happily playing together. Poplar Fruit mainly observed Dejun, but Dejun seemed to be fine. He was still laughing heartily with his friends. How is it? Teacher Lin, how long did you sweep the tower this afternoon? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Zhou Shimin and his son hadn't arrived yet, so the village chief wasn't in a hurry to start. It didn't take too long, but this kid didn't cry or make a fuss. He persevered the whole time. Lin Yongjian said with a smile. His behavior was normal, but his words faintly revealed his pride in his son. I'm very curious about what Master Abbot said to him. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I don't know. This kid didn't say anything when he came back, Lin Yongjian said. Don't ask too much. He remembered the lesson in his heart. That's enough. Hu Jun was older than Lin Yongjian, so it was more appropriate for him to preach. You're asking too much. Even if you're not annoyed, he's annoyed. Poplar Fruit nodded with deep feelings. He was still young and could be considered a young father. He still remembered his past experiences quite clearly. In any case, he had done something wrong. He was willing to ponder and reflect on it in private. However, he hated it when his parents kept harping on it. They would only let him go if he admitted his mistake in front of them and said, I won't do it again a few times. Even if they were children, they still wanted to save face. Who would be willing to be criticized after making a mistake? Therefore, when Yang Guo was educating Chi-Chi about her wrongdoings, he would choose to wait for the little girl to calm down before chatting with her, unless it was a very serious matter. Not only that, but Poplar Fruit and Kiki's preaching usually stopped at a certain point. They would never talk endlessly. Of course, this was also because the little girl was very obedient, so her father didn't have to worry too much. Without further ado, the fathers and children quickly gathered. The village chief announced the start of the sports meet that afternoon. Just like before, Meng Jinglai also sent a representative team to compete with the fathers. This time, the village chief didn't separate the fathers and the villagers into a mixed team. The mixed team situation from last time on the prairie didn't reap good results. The first competition is to eat blindfolded. The village chief announced the first competition of the sports meet. It was a one-on-one competition between the fathers and the villagers' fathers. The rules were also very simple. The contestants would be blindfolded and their children would feed them. Whoever finished eating the fastest would win. Wait, what do we eat? Hu Jun asked directly. That's right, blindfolded eating? What do we eat? Hee, you'll know after eating. The village chief laughed dryly. An ominous feeling began to rise in the fathers' hearts. The village chief saw the sudden change in the fathers' expressions and quickly changed to a relaxed tone. But I can assure you that it's definitely Tsai-Yun's specialty food. The fathers all chuckled. If we believe you, we'll be in trouble. As long as life didn't end, there would be endless torment. How could the 5 fathers not experience the tricks played by the program team and the village chief? Poplar Fruit felt even more uneasy. As a master of language, he keenly noticed the subtlety of the village chief's words. What did he mean by specialty? Poplar Fruit knew that it was definitely not as simple as crossing the bridge rice noodles or fried glutinous rice cakes. We also need to send out a contestant. Who will go first? Meng Jinglai had already sent out his first contestant. The village chief turned his head to look at the 5 fathers. Who would go first? The conversation with the village head just now made the 5 fathers vigilant. None of them were willing to be the first to go. Hu Jun looked at Lin Yongjian. Lin Yongjian looked at Lu Yi, and Lu Yi looked at the younger Zhou Shimin. Zhou Shimin looked left and right, looking at Poplar Fruit, who was trying to sneak back. It was indeed, there's always someone stronger, one younger than the other. Left with no choice, Yanghua forced a smile and puffed out his chest. He walked forward with a valiant and spirited manner, as if he was going to blow up a fortress to block the eye, and said, "If that's the case, then let me do it. Anyway, I'll eat first. I won't know anything. That way, I won't feel burdened." Poplar Fruit was also black-bellied. He smiled mischievously and cupped his hands towards the other fathers. This was the so-called early death, early reincarnation. However, the remaining 4 fathers heaved a sigh of relief. Since it was not their turn yet, there was no need to worry. They would wait and see. Kiki, go and help your father. Right, there was still a little helper who had not followed. The attentive Zhou Shimin hurriedly called out to her. Chi-Chi was frightened by the atmosphere between her fathers just now. She couldn't understand the hidden meaning in their words, but how could she not see the expressions between them? Don't be afraid. Daddy is the one eating, not you. Poplar Fruit smiled and waved at his daughter. The little girl walked to her father's side. She calmed down because her father was here. The village chief asked Poplar Fruit and company to cover their eyes with a red cloth. Only then did he shout begin and remove the cone-shaped cover made of leaves. The village chief also saw the scene on the plate in front of him. His face was filled with shock and fear. Aya, Kiki was the closest. When she saw it, she was shocked. She was not afraid. Kiki was not even afraid of cockroaches. As long as it was a living thing, the little girl would have a loving heart. But she had never seen such a large plate of crispy fried cicadas. At this moment, the little girl was thinking in her heart, should I give it to Papa? Is that true? But Papa is not a bird. How can he eat insects? All of this was beyond the little girl's understanding. She held the spoon in her hand and hesitated. Can this be eaten? Several fathers also came up to take a look. Their eyes were fixed on the plate. They swallowed their saliva. No, it should be said that their stomachs were rolling. Poplar Fruit, who was still blindfolded, did not know anything. Perhaps he heard his daughter scream, but his daughter did not move for a long time, which made him a little anxious. The villagers next to him had already started eating. He could not help but urge the little girl and said, Kiki, quickly, Quickly feed it to Daddy. Chapter 13:28. If he couldn't see, what would happen? One was that the ignorant were fearless. If he couldn't see, he wouldn't know what it was. He could just stuff it down his throat. Another was that he couldn't see, but could feel. That was when his imagination ran wild, and the more he thought about it, the scarier it became. If one saw how Poplar Fruit took a big bite of the spoon that Kiki handed to him and chewed it with all his might, then continued eating and chewing, everyone would think that Poplar Fruit was the first type. But who knew that Poplar Fruit was actually the second type? The moment the crispy cicadas entered his mouth, he could feel it. This texture was definitely that of an insect. Poplar Fruit already knew that something was wrong. His muscles automatically reacted by chewing twice, and he could immediately tell that there were many legs and wings, and they weren't small. What was this? It couldn't be those green flies, could it? Thinking of this, Poplar Fruit wanted to vomit, but he couldn't vomit. The competition was still in progress. He had chosen to participate in the competition, so he had to eat it even if he had to hold back his tears. Indeed, Poplar Fruit's nose twitched, and his eyes turned red under the red cloth. He was about to cry. What was there to be afraid of? Eat. He had already started eating flies. What was there to be afraid of? Not only did he want to eat, he also wanted to win. Otherwise, if he lost after putting in so much effort, he would really lose everything. Hence, Poplar Fruit began stuffing it down under everyone's gaze. He did not dare to chew too much, afraid that he would be too disgusted. He swallowed it down after a few chews, and his speed was astonishing. A few fathers, who had regained their senses, were still shouting, pour it all down." Poplar Fruit also responded to everyone's shouts. Without waiting for his daughter to feed him, he picked up the plate and poured it into his mouth. Of course, a lot of it fell out of his mouth and onto the table. He felt someone move behind his head, and Poplar Fruit's eyes suddenly lit up. The audience saw that it was the village chief. He was so naughty that he had unshackled Poplar Fruit's eyes midway, allowing him to look directly at what he was eating. He should be afraid now, right? However, Poplar Fruit was indifferent. Instead, he ate even faster. Why? Because Poplar Fruit saw it clearly. He realized that he was eating cicada. When he was young, he often went to catch cicadas with his friends. How could he not know him? Of course, Poplar Fruit had never eaten cicadas before, but he knew that someone had eaten cicadas before, and he had also drunk Chinese medicine made from cicadas. That is the molted shell of cicadas. However, this discovery still lifted Poplar Fruit's spirits. No matter what, cicada was still better than the flies he had imagined. After eating the Poplar Fruit, he became more courageous. Moreover, at this time, Poplar Fruit also recovered. It doesn't seem too bad, does it? No, it should be said that the taste was not bad. Although it looked disgusting after soaking it in salt water and frying it in oil, it smelled fragrant and tasted fragrant and crispy. It was no worse than those snacks. It was just that many people found it difficult to accept. Of course, Poplar Fruit was stuffing himself at this time. He didn't care about tasting it carefully, but after he put down the psychological burden, Poplar Fruit ate faster. You have to eat those that fall on the table, the village chief reminded. Poplar Fruit used both hands. Kiki also helped her father. She stood on her tiptoes and helped her father gather the scattered cicadas on the table. Then, Poplar Fruit grabbed them and stuffed them into his mouth. Although at the beginning, Kiki was indeed a few seconds slower because she was afraid, and although Poplar Fruit was indeed not as calm as the villager brother next to him, Poplar Fruit still took the first place with his storm-like eating speed. Yeah, Poplar Fruit smiled and high-fived with the other fathers and his daughter to celebrate. This could be considered as getting off to a good start. The village chief asked his fellow villagers and announced the source of the dish. It was really cicada. However, the children's reactions were very strong. Dejun said that he ate cicada. Nuai frowned and said with a bodhisattva's heart, Aya, you're not allowed to eat cicada. It's too disgusting. I also don't want my daddy to suddenly turn into a big bird and fly away. Kiki's imagination was also running wild. She frowned and nervously grabbed her father's clothes, as if her father was really going to fly away. There's no such thing. Poplar Fruit smiled and patted his daughter's head and said, "Why would Daddy turn into a bird?" The children chatted and had all kinds of reactions. Kong Kong and Xian Xian were not afraid. Xian Xian even said that she wanted to eat it. It was indeed the nature of a foodie. De Jun grabbed Nuo E and continued with his imagination running wild. "I saw a bird in the zoo that liked to eat big, white maggots." These words did not scare the other children. For example, Kiki did not even know what maggots looked like. However, it scared Lu Yi, who was beside her, until his face turned pale. "How do you feel?" Lu Yi pulled Poplar Fruit and asked with a smile. "Actually, it's not bad." Poplar Fruit nodded and smiled. "It looks disgusting, but it's not the same when you eat it. It's quite delicious." He even deliberately licked his lips, causing Lu Ye's face to turn even paler. But was it really like what Poplar Fruit said? In fact, when Poplar Fruit was later interviewed, he first shivered. Then, he spoke about his psychological journey from fear to determination. It was really a lot of snot and tears. Whose turn would it be next? Lu Yi did not dare to go up. He planned to observe for a while more. Then, Hu Jun steeled his heart and walked forward. I'll go. The second one might not be this," Zhou Shimin said to Hu Jun. When the village chief opened the lid, everyone could see clearly what medicine was being sold. Mango. Although they were yellow and looked like worms, Hu Jun's nose was wrinkled as he ate them. In fact, they were just thin strips of mango. Of course, it was not only the mango. Only Hu Jun, who had eaten them, knew that there was something else added in it, like chili. Go for it. Go for it. A few children shouted from the side. As it was not some strange insect, they were not that afraid and shouted very enthusiastically. Kiki was even more enthusiastic. She shouted with all her might to this uncle she liked. Even the little girl's fair skin was blushing from shouting. It was a close match, but because Hu Jun had his blindfold removed from his eyes by the village chief, he was able to use both hands and was faster than his opponent. He obtained a second victory. How rare. The fathers were actually able to obtain 2 victories in a row. Just as the fathers were cheering, and Hu Jun was proudly talking about the taste of the mango. After all, it was not worms. The little glutton, Xian Xian, actually stretched out her short hands to take the mango leftovers on the table. Of course, he cannot take it. Kiki stood beside him and helped him take a piece. Then, she also took a piece and stuffed it into her mouth. When the little glutton met the little glutton, the two of them began to secretly eat. Aya! Kiki and Xian Xian's expressions suddenly changed. Kiki even spat out the leftovers to the side and fanned her mouth. It was too spicy. Who asked you to be greedy? Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry as he looked for water for his daughter. Chapter 1329. After winning 2 matches in a row, who knew that they would lose 2 matches in a row? Next, Lin Yongjian and Zhou Shimin both lost when they were eating the grasshopper in scallion sauce. The grasshopper was needless to say. Even though Lin Yongjian had the same feelings as Poplar Fruit and was determined to eat the disgusting food, the speed at which he ate the grasshopper was nothing to be proud of. Halfway through, he was eating and spitting. The cameraman standing in front of him was almost sprayed with insect residue. However, after this, the 2 little gluttons, Xian Xian and Kiki, bravely tried the grasshopper. Xian Xian wanted to eat it first, so Zhou Shimin picked one up from the table and stuffed it into his mouth. Kiki saw it and also wanted to eat it. How was the taste? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Delicious. Everyone looked at the strange grasshopper, but Kiki ate it with relish. Perhaps because it was really delicious, Xian Xian nodded and said, "It's very delicious." Let's not talk about how disgusting the grasshopper Zhou Shimin ate was. It was different from the previous food. It was like a soup cooked with scallion sauce, which made the fathers somewhat confused. Xian Xian then used a spoon to feed him the soup. Not only did he spill some of it, but he also ate it very slowly. On the other hand, the Dai villagers were more experienced. They directly picked up a small bowl and poured it into their mouths. Just like that, they finished it. Shimon, tell us how it feels. The village chief pulled Shimon, who was eating with a bitter face, and asked, what else could it feel like? Disgusting. Do you know what the grasshopper was made of? In addition to the spicy spices that were unique to Dai Village, there was also beef tripe, wild scallion, and even the grass juice taken from the tail of an ox. This was grass that had been eaten by an ox, and the stomach juice had not been regurgitated. After listening to the village chief's explanation, everyone's face turned green. Can this thing be eaten? It can really eat. The Dai family regarded it as a very important summer food. Furthermore, it had cooling and detoxifying effects, so people who drank it rarely fell sick. However, people who didn't understand it would feel like eating shit when they ate it, because there was a very bitter juice from the small intestine of the cow added in it. It was spicy and bitter. No wonder Shimon wanted to vomit. While the adults were complaining, the children didn't seem to feel anything. They were still having fun. Kong was alone again. He wandered outside the group and found a long water trough beside him. It was made of wood and looked like a canoe. The little boy stepped in with interest and sat on it. In the crowd, Kiki giggled. For some reason, she was so happy that she turned around. Just like that, she inadvertently saw Brother Kong sitting on the wooden boat. What's that? The little girl's gaze was actually on the wooden boat. She was very curious, so she left the group behind and walked towards Brother Kong. Kong was a little nervous when she saw her beautiful sister skipping over. The little boy tried his best to hide it, but his tense face was caught by the photographer. Brother Kong, Kiki giggled. Her voice was as clear as a wind chime. Where did you get this? A boat. Kong was so nervous that he didn't know what to say. He could only squeeze out one word. Don't boats sail in the sea? Kiki doubtfully swayed. She was looking at the long water trough, but it made Kong even more nervous. Brother Kong, can I sit on it too? Kong did not answer, so Kiki asked another question. Of course, she asked this question casually. The little girl did not treat Brother Kong as an outsider. Without waiting for Brother Kong to nod, she reached out and pressed on Brother Kong's shoulder and climbed onto the trough from behind. Kong did not expect to be pressed down by his sister. At that moment, he only felt that his shoulders and body were all stiff, and he did not dare to move. And at that moment, Kong could clearly feel his sister's white and rosy face approaching. Kiki's skin was really good. Her skin was moist and delicate, and because of the hot weather, her baby fat cheeks were a little red. She was super cute. Kong felt that he could not hold on any longer. His tense face was about to reach his limit. He really wanted to laugh. It was not out of happiness, joy, or pride. He did not know why, but he just wanted to laugh. Hey, I'm sitting in too. Kiki sat behind Brother Kong. The energetic girl looked around happily and giggled, as if there was a new perspective sitting there. Kong's face was tense. He felt that he should not be so quiet. From just now until now, he had only said the word boat. Kiki did not mind Brother Kong's silence. She still had a bright smile on her face. Under the photographer's gesture, she looked at the camera with Brother Kong. In a midsummer dream, the boy and the girl seemed to be rowing in the park on the blue waves. They seemed to hear a familiar song. Let's paddle. It's so beautiful. It's a pity not to have a souvenir. After taking the photos, Kiki smiled and said to Brother Kong, Brother Kong, let's go. Do-do-do-do. The girl even mischievously imitated the sound of a steamboat. Kong seemed to have found a topic to talk about. He could explain to his sister that this was not a steamboat, but a wooden one. However, when he turned his head, he saw that Sister Kiki had already stood up. The girl could not wait to jump off the boat when her long and slender legs flashed in front of his eyes. The girl shouted anxiously, Nui's Papa is going to compete. I'm going to cheer for Nui's Papa. All right, Kong opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Sister Kiki ran back, leaving him sitting there alone. The program team's editing was very good. It vividly portrayed Kong's depressed and disappointed feelings. This explained one thing. One could not hesitate when chasing a girl. One could not be timid. One had to dare to speak up. Otherwise, one would miss opportunities again and again. Of course, children did not have such complicated emotions. Kong Kong sat there alone for a while. When he saw the commotion over there, he could not help but stand up to take a look. Lu Yi was fighting with a plate of black fried centipedes. Luckily, after being fried, the centipedes did not look so ferocious. Hence, after Lu Ye's blindfold was removed, he was still eating with all his might. However, the fried centipedes were really not tasty. In Lu Ye's words, it was like chewing plastic. After eating a mouthful of it, he could not swallow it. Whoever can swallow it first will be the final victor. The village chief changed the rules of the final match. However, Lu Yi gave up. He secretly spat out the fried centipedes in his mouth. However, he did not rely on deception to win. He openly told the village chief that the other party would win. There was no other way. He could not swallow it. Although his father's team had lost 3 consecutive matches after winning, ruining their chances of winning, Lu Ye's honesty was still worthy of praise, setting an example, being an honest child. Chapter 1330. The second event was to melt the ice and retrieve the puzzle. In the end, the thick-skinned Hu Jun turned it into a broken ice and retrieved the puzzle. Although it was a little unfair, at least it saved the father's team some face. After that, they took a short break. However, the fathers and the children saw the staff strangely carrying a thick water pipe and pouring water into the wooden trough where Kong Kong and Kiki were playing. Moreover, everyone realized that there was not only one wooden trough. On the other side, there was also a long wooden trough where the Dai village team was standing. What are they doing? Kiki scratched her head and asked curiously. Maybe they are about to set sail. Kong Kong finally had the chance to answer. But Daddy. In the end, little sister Chi-Chi turned around and ran away again. She found her omniscient father and asked in confusion, Papa, why? Why did Uncle and the others load water for the boat? Why is there water in the boat? Isn't there water outside the boat? There is water in the boat because it is not a boat. Poplar Fruit shattered his daughter's fantasy and laughed. It is used to store water. Then why is it filled with water? Is it used for bathing? The little girl asked innocently. Maybe it is used for splashing water? Poplar Fruit was not too sure, but he remembered that the Dai village had a tradition of splashing water. Why is it splashing water? The little girl's questions were really endless. After a while, the village chief announced the rules of the next competition. It was really related to splashing water. The name of the competition was the water passing competition. The children would stand in a row and their father would grab their thighs to prevent them from moving. Then, one by one, they would use a wooden bucket to pass the water from the bucket. Finally, the water would be poured into a large number of cups. The team that poured the most water in the stipulated time would be the winner. The first one must have the most strength and endurance. Lu Yi said, There will not be a lot of water at the back. Try to catch as much water as you can to win. According to this strategy, Kong Kong and Hu Jun stood at the edge of the wooden trough. They were the first contestants to pass the water, while the weakest contestant, De Jun, stood at the back with Lin Yongjian. De Jun's strength had been proven on the grasslands. He couldn't even compare to brother Xian, who was 2 years younger. There was some debate about who would be second. Lu Yi felt that since Kiki was a girl, no, he should take the responsibility of second place. However, Poplar Fruit disagreed. He felt that his daughter was very strong. Although she was not as strong as brother Kong Kong, she still had a lot of advantages over brother Nui. Thinking back to when they were picking grapes, Kiki was indeed carrying a large basket by herself. Lu Yi no longer wanted to compete with Poplar Fruit for the second place. Thus, Nui stood at the 3rd position, and the 4th position was the little meatball Xian. Everyone stood in their respective positions. The village chief shouted 3, 2, 1, and the competition officially began. In the beginning, everyone was immersed in the nervous emotions of the competition. Because of nervousness, it was natural for them to make mistakes. Moreover, Kong Kong was not even 7 years old yet. Wah! Pooey. Kong Kong filled the bucket with water and threw it. Hu Jun did not help at all. In the end, Kong Kong used too much strength and splashed the water on Kiki and Poplar Fruit's faces. There was some water in the bucket, but most of it was received by Kiki and Poplar Fruit with their faces. Kiki, Kiki. Kiki used one hand to wipe her face as she laughed in amusement. Kong Kong did not have the time to apologize. She turned around and splashed another bucket of water. At this time, Kiki was still wiping her face. Poplar Fruit and his daughter were drenched again. Their clothes were soaked. Poplar Fruit was holding onto his daughter's waist, so he could only shake his head to get rid of the water on his face. Kiki suffered even more. The little girl's hair was scattered by the water. A few strands curled and stuck to her cheeks playfully and cutely. Aim, Kong Kong, aim. Poplar Fruit saw Kong Kong coming again and quickly shouted. Fortunately, Kong Kong had adjusted herself this time, and Chi-Chi had also put her attention into it. Surprisingly, she didn't lose too much in the process. Turning around, Kiki was about to pass the water to Nui, but the two children seemed to be a little far apart. The little girl could not help but call out innocently, "Brother Nui, come closer. If you can't come over, you could just fall over like this." Poplar Fruit shouted. Thus, Kiki made her move. She did not adjust well and splashed half a bucket of water, drenching Nua, E, and Lu Ye's faces. Behind, Zhou Shimin could not laugh anymore. This was really fun. How was this passing water? This was splashing water, okay? Next, Kiki received half a bucket of water from Brother Kong Kong. This time, Poplar Fruit did not dare let his daughter mess around. If she splashed water on their faces again, they would play this game until tomorrow, and most of their cups would be empty. Poplar Fruit shouted, "Kiki, use less strength. Look carefully before splashing." This time the water splashed out. Although some of it splashed on Nua Yi's face, a large part of it still went in. Quick, quick! After waiting for a long time, Zhou Shimin and Lin Yongjian, who did not feel like participating, finally became happy. After all, the water could finally be passed over. They did not have to stand and watch the show anymore. But before he could finish his sentence, a white water column accurately avoided the bucket and hit Zhou Shimin's face. Xuanchuan's face was only splashed a few drops. Zhou Shimin was the most miserable. He was still laughing just now, but now it was his turn to suffer. Kiki and Kong Kong's cooperation was getting better and better. After all, they were not weak and could always pass the water that was splashed out. Kiki was also getting more and more used to it. Every time she splashed out, most of the water would go into Nua Yi's bucket. But when it came to Nua Yi, it was as if there was a fault. He could not pass the water out no matter how many times he tried. Either he was too weak and fell on the grass, or he used too much strength and fell on Xuanchuan's face. Xianxian's round face was also dripping with water. Her instant noodle hair had almost turned into cooked instant noodles. He poured a little water over to Dejun. In the end, Dejun only received a few drops of water. Lin Yongjian sighed. Yeah, that's all. Luckily, Kong Kong and Kiki at the front were more supportive. The two of them were like assembly line workers, working hard to give Nua Yi more water cannons. But in the end, the father's team still lost the competition. This was because Dejun only had 2 chances to pour water into a large cup. And once again, he fell on the grass. Winning or losing was not important. Happiness was the most important thing. But now, Kiki, Nua Yi, and Xianxian were all wet. How could Kong Kong and Dejun be spared? Next, the villagers in the village all went up together and played a lively splashing festival. Kiki was having a lot of fun. She did not even want her father to block the water for her. She took a small basin and chased after her 4 friends to splash water. Listening to her happy laughter, it was as if the sun on the horizon was reluctant to leave the mountain. Chapter 13:31. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you later. After the lively splashing activity, Poplar Fruit brought his drenched daughter home. The village chief had said that they had to gather again in 2 hours for the evening's activity. First, he had to give Kiki a bath and change into dry clothes. Although the weather was hot, if she kept jumping around in wet clothes, she would catch a cold or even a fever later. Because it was already nighttime and she had to sleep later, Poplar Fruit changed his daughter into a vest that she usually used as pajamas. It had blue and white stripes and looked very simple and elegant. The shoulder straps were as narrow as two ropes tied behind the neck, exposing the little girl's shoulders to the air. It was a very cool little singlet. Not only did it reveal her arms and shoulders, it also revealed the front of her lapel and her back. Chi-Chi's fair and smooth skin was fully exposed. Although the little girl didn't have much flesh on her body, and there wasn't much to look at, this was the first time the little girl's delicate and moist skin, her slender and slim arms, and her exquisite collarbone had appeared in front of the camera. Poplar Fruit changed his daughter into a pair of very loose blue-black pants. Although it was very loose and went past the knees, the little girl's thin and long legs couldn't be covered. Instead, because of the obvious contrast, it made her legs look even more slender and long. It had to be said that other than the fact that the little girl had no breasts, her good figure and exquisite face made many adult female fans both love and hate her. They loved Chi-Chi's naivety and cuteness, but they hated the fact that a little girl who was not even 5 years old could be so beautiful. She could be described as a demon. Was there still a need for an Uni who was too old to be wanted by anyone? Poplar Fruit also took a simple bath. The summer in Kaiyun was very hot, so he estimated that he would have to take another bath when he came back at night. In terms of clothing, Poplar Fruit would always pick out the best for his daughter. But when it came to himself, he did not care at all. He would dress the way he usually dressed at home, in school, and in the show. Now that he was no longer endorsing Givenchy, his clothes were still the cheap ones that could be bought at Tengu Mall for a few $100s. Of course, Poplar Fruit was a man who looked good in all kinds of clothes. First, he had a good figure, and second, he had a temperament. Others would look like passers-by on the street when they wore designer clothes that cost tens of thousands of yuan. But he looked handsome when he wore clothes that cost hundreds of yuan. After Poplar Fruit came out, he saw his daughter squatting in front of a basket and looking at it. He smiled and said, "What are you looking at?" Of course, he knew what it was. When he came back earlier, the photographer had told him that it was an ingredient for dinner. "Look at pineapple." The little girl happily jumped up from the ground, pulled her father's hand, and giggled. "Papa, there's pineapple here." Poplar Fruit looked at the little girl with a smile. How could he not know his daughter? When Kiki mentioned pineapple, she knew what he meant. She smiled and asked, "I know, you want to eat pineapple sweet and sour pork again, right?" "Hee hee, Papa will make pineapple sweet and sour pork for Chi-Chi to eat today, okay?" Yangwu guessed right. The little girl smiled sweetly, pulled her father's hand, and acted coquettishly. Poplar Fruit looked at the basket and saw that there was still pork in it. He smiled and patted his daughter's little head and said, "Okay, if you want to eat, Papa will make it for you." Pineapple sweet and sour pork was a very famous Cantonese dish. The process was not complicated, but the ingredients were very delicate. Fortunately, all of these were stored in Poplar Fruit's mind. As soon as he said it, Poplar Fruit washed the knife and anvil and began to cut the big pineapple. Many people did not know how to deal with this thorny thing, but watching Poplar Fruit deal with the pineapple was like watching an art film. He cut it horizontally and vertically, and quickly cut it a few times. The pineapple was like a spinning top in his hand. After the knife light and sword shadow, the pineapple was only a white and fat ball. His cutting method was different from the internet's method of cutting it into several equal parts and then slowly peeling off the skin. Poplar Fruit trusted his cutting skills. The outer skin was almost a thin layer, and the flesh inside was not damaged. Of course, later on, Poplar Fruit still had to cut off the black eyes of the pineapple. After watching her father deal with the pineapple, Kiki could not sit still. She remembered the peacock raised in the first room that the village chief said in the morning. The little girl jumped down from the chair and ran to her father's side. She said, "Papa, I'm going to Brother Nuyi's house to see the peacock." It was still early. Poplar Fruit looked at the bright sky and nodded. He smiled and said to Kiki, "Okay, you have to go with Uncle. Don't run around." Poplar Fruit's house was not too far from Nuyi's house, and there was a responsible photographer following them. Poplar Fruit was not worried. Anyway, he could not make the food in a short time. So he let Kiki play first. Pineapple sweet and sour pork was indeed troublesome. Not only did the pineapple have to be soaked in salt water for 10 minutes after cutting it, but the pork was also troublesome. It had to be cut into pieces, marinated with starch, eggs, and other ingredients, rolled in dry flour before it was put into the pot, and then fried in a pan of oil. The key to making the sweet and sour pork was not just these two. It also had to be made with ketchup, white vinegar, white sugar, and other sauces. Whether the sweet and sour pork was delicious or not depended on the ratio of the sauces. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit often made it for Kiki at home, so he knew how to season it. Poplar Fruit spent a lot of effort and finally made the sweet and sour pork, but Poplar Fruit still wanted to make other dishes. There were potatoes, chicken wings, and other ingredients in the basket. Poplar Fruit planned to cook a plate of sour and spicy shredded potatoes for his daughter. If there was time, Poplar Fruit also wanted to make a barbecue. He saw the barbecue rack just now. However, it was at this moment that Chi-Chi came back. The little girl looked at the fragrant sweet and sour pork on the table, but she was not very happy. The little girl said with pity, "Papa, Brother Nui is so pitiful." How is he pitiful? After listening to his daughter's explanation, Poplar Fruit found out that Nui and Lu Yi were using soy sauce to go with the rice. Could it be that this scammer's father did not cook for Nui? Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little ridiculous. Actually, there was. Lu Yi still made a plate of potatoes. The audience saw that as he sang, shredded potatoes, 7 shredded potatoes on a vine. He made a simple plate of fried shredded potatoes. It was oily, and he even added a lot of salt. He even shamelessly said that he could not let Anna know. Otherwise, he would have to cook for them when they got home. Nui was so pitiful. Kiki also felt the same, so she really wanted to help her good friend. Chapter 1332. Big Eyes Met Big Eyes. Poplar Fruit squatted down and looked into his daughter's eyes. For a moment, the father and daughter fell into silence. Poplar Fruit looked at the freshly cooked pineapple sweet and sour pork on the table, and then looked at his daughter. Kiki followed her father's gaze and looked at the fragrant pineapple sweet and sour pork. It looked delicious. Thinking about its sweet and sour taste, the little girl couldn't help but swallow her saliva. "Why don't we share some with Brother Nui?" Chi-Chi hesitated for a moment before she pouted and said reluctantly, "Amen, we can't eat that much either." The last part was true. A whole plate of pineapple sweet and sour pineapple meat was almost filled to the brim with a large plate. No matter how big Poplar Fruit and Kiki's appetites were, they couldn't finish so much pineapple sweet and sour pork. There was also white rice, but Poplar Fruit was still very surprised. Kiki volunteered to share her favorite food with her friends. Although it wasn't the first time, it was still considered a breakthrough. One had to know that pineapple sweet and sour pork was Chi-Chi's favorite food. This reminded Poplar Fruit of Kiki's childhood. This little foodie was very protective of her food. She was only a little over 1 year old, and she even threw a tantrum with a bad Uncle Song Jiwin over her favorite food. Who would have thought that Kiki would grow up and be so sensible? She was willing to share her favorite food with her friends, and it was even her favorite pineapple sweet and sour pork. Poplar Fruit decided to see if his daughter was really willing to share. He asked softly, "Okay, do you want to give it to Brother Nui?" I'm good friends with Brother Nui, so I want to share it with him." Kiki seemed to have made up her mind, and she nodded seriously. Poplar Fruit smiled and continued, "If we give it to Brother Nui, then should we also give it to Brother Kong Kong, Brother Dajuan, and Brother Shin Xian?" He couldn't attend to one thing and lose sight of the other. It wasn't that Yongguo was trying to be righteous. That was what Yongguo was thinking. Moreover, he wanted to see if his daughter was really willing to share most of the pineapple sweet and sour meat that she liked to eat. Yeah, Kiki didn't seem to realize the difference between a portion and a majority. The little girl giggled and said, "There's still Brother Kong Kong, Brother Dajuan, and Brother Xian Xian. They're also my good friends." Therefore, Poplar Fruit borrowed a bamboo basket from the owner, washed 4 bowls, and used a spoon to fill each bowl with half a bowl of sweet and sour pork. The first 2 bowls were still okay, But as the bowl went on, the large plate of pineapple sweet and sour pork began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. Half of it was gone, and it continued to shrink. Soon, almost all of it was in the bowl. In the camera, the young lady's beautiful eyes were fixed on the goo meat on the plate, and her expression slowly became anxious. There is a big difference between sharing a portion and sharing a majority. After sharing a portion, there was still a lot of pineapple sweet and sour pork left. Based on her father's appetite and her own, the remaining pineapple sweet and sour pork wouldn't be enough to fill their teeth. What's wrong? You don't want to share? Poplar Fruit was filling the last bowl. He smiled at his daughter and asked. The little girl pouted and hugged her father's leg. She felt wronged and couldn't bear to look at the pineapple sweet and sour pork that was still shrinking. She stubbornly said, "No." Poplar Fruit smiled. This time, it was really a happy smile. How could he not understand the little girl's thoughts? She didn't mean what she said, but this was the embodiment of her growth. He finished filling the wooden basket and used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of pineapple sweet and sour pork. He gently lifted his daughter's hair and stuffed the piece of pineapple sweet and sour pork into his daughter's mouth. "Is it good?" Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter and asked with a smile. Because of the delicious food, the little girl's mood rose again. She squinted her eyes and chewed with her mouth full. The sweet and sour taste made her forget her grievances. The little girl nodded vigorously, and her father stuffed another piece of pineapple sweet and sour pork in her mouth. She ate so much that she couldn't stop talking. "Go, follow Uncle to deliver it. After you're done, come back and eat with Daddy," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Don't worry, even if the pineapple sweet and sour pork isn't enough, Daddy will stir-fry shredded potatoes for you and make barbecue for you." "Okay." The little girl finally felt relieved. She smiled sweetly and replied. Her long ponytail swung, and she carried the small basket and happily followed the cameraman out. Poplar Fruit stood at the door and watched his daughter's back as she left. Gradually, it was silent in the night before he turned back to prepare the rest of the meal. However, the little girl's delivery of the meal disrupted Poplar Fruit's plan. Originally, after he finished cooking, there would be enough time for the little girl to eat with him. However, when Poplar Fruit finished roasting the chicken leg, it was almost time to gather, but Kiki hadn't come back yet. That was too long. Poplar Fruit asked the director, and she learned through the headset that Kiki had just come out of the last restaurant, Zoe Shimon's. There was definitely not enough time for dinner. Poplar Fruit thought that he might as well put the 2 dishes and the roasted chicken wings into the rice cooker and let the rice dry. He would eat it when they came back in the evening. The taste would definitely be greatly reduced, but there was no other way. The whole crew couldn't be delayed because of the father and daughter, could they? Poplar Fruit went out to meet his daughter, but saw Zoe Shimon and Xian, who had sent Kiki back. When he asked, he found out that Zoe Shimon and the others hadn't eaten either. Zoe Shimon was also busy. In addition to shooting a sensational clip of an advertiser with Xian, he also worked for a long time to make pineapple steamed rice with pineapple. Naturally, there wasn't enough time to wait for the rice to be cooked. He told the landlord, took his son, sent Kiki home, and called Poplar Fruit to participate in the evening program. "Poplar Fruit, you haven't eaten either, right?" Zoe Shimon asked with a smile. "Yes." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "The dishes are still in the pot. We'll eat them when we come back." Zoe Shimon was interested. He smiled and said, "Well, let's eat together when we come back. I just steamed pineapple rice. It's sweet. The child will definitely like it. And I also have the landlord's honey wine. Let's taste it tonight." Zoe Shimon said with a smile. "Papa, you can't drink." The little girl's ears were very sharp. She immediately pouted and said, Poplar Fruit really didn't want to drink, but since it was a meeting between friends, he had to do something. He touched his daughter's little head and said with a smile, "It's okay. Papa won't drink too much. I just want to taste it." He turned to Zoe Shimon and said, "This is a good idea. You can cook pineapple rice and wine. I also prepared barbecue and roasted chicken legs. Xian will definitely like it. Of course, there are other dishes too. I want to eat." Little Chu Xian heard and was about to drool. "Haha, it's a deal," Zoe Shimon said with a smile. Chapter 1333. Shan came late in the summer night, but by the time Poplar Fruit's 5 fathers and 5 children gathered together, it was already as dark as ink. They could only hear the silence and depth of the forest. There were still lights in the place where they gathered, but they were not very bright. This was not because the production team was stingy, but because if the lights were brightly lit, the effect of the show would be much worse later. Everyone looked in the direction the village chief was pointing. There was a cement platform on the side of the forest, and then a tall frame made of bamboo was built on top of it. It was a bit like the outer frame of a building at a construction site. Of course, this was not for everyone to see the construction site. On top of this frame, there was a long bamboo slanted diagonally. Poplar Fruit's sharp eyes could see the mystery of this thing. How should he put it? This thing was like the big iron rod in the hands of the Awakening Lions team during the Cantonese Spring Festival. The top was thick, and there were huge firecrackers stuffed in it. When ignited, it could make the world tremble. Or, to put it another way, this thing was like a rocket in aerospace engineering, but the engines were turned upside down. There was no need to describe it. No matter how strange it was, it should have its use. This time, producer Xie popped up again. Although producer Xie did not appear on TV many times, he had appeared once for the first time, and now he appeared again. It had already been 5 episodes. However, the children still liked producer Xie very much. This man with the most power in the entire production team did not put on any airs. He usually hid his achievements and fame, but he also talked and laughed with the children in private. Why did he appear now? The fathers and children were all very curious. After the greetings, they got to the main topic. They saw the thin and small producer Xie holding a long bamboo pole with a lit torch in one hand and climbing up the frame like a monkey. The children were all entranced, and their little mouths opened one after another. After they saw producer Xie light the fuse, they jumped down with their heads in their hands and ran far away. The bamboo pole suddenly spewed out thick white smoke, and with a whistling sound, it flew out. Wow! The scene in front of them was as magical as magic in the eyes of the children. These are fireworks, Big Brother Kong Kong said confidently. I've seen them before. They're fireworks for the Spring Festival. This is a bomber, Dejun said, unconvinced. How could something that could spit out so much smoke be so weak? This is called Gaosheng, the village chief explained. The fathers all understood. Didn't fireworks made of bamboo contain the beautiful meaning of rising step by step? It was no wonder that the first Gaosheng had been called out by producer Xie. This was the same reason why producer Xie had personally lit the firecrackers during the first episode of the show. Let's not talk about these feudal superstitions. Next, it was the fathers' turn to challenge. Under the village chief's instructions, everyone gathered at his ammunition depot to pick their own Gaosheng. Although Poplar Fruit was already the father of a 4-year-old child, his playful heart was not small. Like Hu Jun, who could even play with a motorcycle, both of them wanted to rush to the big Gaosheng. The bigger the Gaosheng, the higher the risk factor. Looking at the bamboo in her father's hand that was almost as thick as her head, Kiki, who was watching the fun, could not stand it anymore. Papa, don't do this. This is too big. Kiki, who was wearing a small singlet, had jade-like shoulders that twisted with the movement of her small hands. Looking at her nervous little face, one could feel the little girl's deep concern for her father. The children next to her were also as nervous as Kiki. They were happy when they saw producer Xie light the Gaosheng, but the sharp whistling sound was quite scary. Don't be afraid. Your father knows what to do. Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's little head with a smile and said softly, "Later, you can watch other uncles light it. As long as they light it, I will run back quickly and run to Kiki's side. There will be no danger." Really? Kiki did not cry as easily as she did in the first episode. She increasingly believed in her father's words and ability. Of course, he was the most powerful father in the world. Of course, Poplar Fruit's firm smile gave Kiki a lot of confidence. Okay then, Papa, you have to run faster. The little girl struggled for the last time and did not insist. After choosing, the fathers looked at each other. Poplar Fruit, who was skilled and bold, stepped forward to give the fathers a demonstration. Of course, Poplar Fruit did not take the biggest gaosheng. Zoshimin also prepared the biggest gaosheng at the end, placing the bamboo diagonally on the shelf. Poplar Fruit turned around and prepared to light the match. However, he realized that the little girl had unknowingly run in front of him. "Kiki, come over to Uncle," Lu Yi shouted. "You can't go there. Your father has a mission and can't take care of you." Poplar Fruit did not light the match. He pulled the curious little girl back to the village chief and asked him to take care of her. It was not that he did not like Lu Yi, but Lu Yi still had to take care of Nuo Yi. Poplar Fruit was worried that he could not take care of her. This gaosheng did not look at how confident Poplar Fruit sounded. Once it was lit, it would fly into the sky. But with such a long bamboo, if it did not fly, or if it flew randomly, who knew what would happen? Therefore, for his daughter's safety, Poplar Fruit had to be careful. He was still thinking that, after lighting the fire, he would quickly run in front of his daughter and use his body to shield her. "Over here," a father asked. "If this thing flies out, aren't you afraid of hurting people?" "That's right. Let's just let it fly. This is not the kind that explodes in midair. If it flies out and hits someone in the forest, what will happen?" The village chief smiled and said, "The location of the gaosheng has been carefully surveyed by experienced villagers. If they want to release the gaosheng, they will give notice in advance. That way, no one will go there." Although that was the case, there was still danger. Furthermore, without any awareness of environmental protection, if such a big bamboo fell from the sky, people would be fine, but animals would suffer. Yangwu didn't think too much about it. Instead, he excitedly climbed up the shelf and lit the fuse with a long, thin bamboo stick from afar. He was still quite calm. He did not throw the bamboo away. After he jumped down, he ran back to his daughter's side without looking back. Before Poplar Fruit could turn around, he heard the sound of gas spewing out. He turned back and saw a thick cloud of smoke. The bamboo, as thick as an arm, had already flown out. "Yeah, it's a success." The little girl heaved a sigh of relief. She happily jumped up from the village chief and into her father's arms to celebrate. Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's back, which was slightly cool and moist. He laughed. It was indeed a little fun. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.